The main character sat by the crackling campfire, hands hovering over the heat, and decided to cook his own food right there instead of waiting around. The main character said the sky was already turning dark then. Out of nowhere, strange glowing objects popped up right beside him. The main character froze, staring at them like they'd lit up the world because their beauty left him completely stunned. The whole world around the main character shimmered with glowing objects, and it looked insanely beautiful. He leaped onto the flowers and dove straight over the water, swimming just above the surface. The main character snapped his head toward his friend, CL, and told him straight up he didn't care one bit about being a hero. He tipped his chin to the sky and told CL, "I'm not asking for much, I just want to go as far as I possibly can." He just wants to tear through this amazing world and soak in every breathtaking view it has to offer. After a short while, the main character burst into the Adventurers Guild, slinging a massive messenger bag over his shoulder, and every single person in the tavern turned to stare at him. One of the visitors laughed and said he'd bet 4 coppers he could make it happen. Then another guy came in, clutched 5 coppers in his hands, and asked if that was really all his friend was risking, and he shot back, "I'm betting 5 that the fool will slip." Still, the main character kept moving with steady strides. No stutter, no stagger, while everyone stared at him, shocked. One of the visitors couldn't wrap his head around how the main character just strolled calmly with all that weight on his back. His neighbor even asked if it was cool, then the memory hit him. He hadn't seen him. The main character snapped his head toward his friend and demanded to know where he was dragging him this time. In a world that felt totally off limits, our hero candidate got drafted once and ever since. He's been stuck running deliveries, so he stepped onto a small street, clenched his resolve, and swore he'd pull off that next drop. In this world, machines didn't exist. No tech, no science, nothing advanced, just raw life with nothing to rely on. The only reason he and every normal Japanese can stay alive in this world is simple. They're kept standing by one thing, walking. The moment he arrived in this world, he got one gift that made everything possible: walking. Sora stepped right up to the meat counter and stared at the selection like his appetite was ready to explode. The guy wheeled around, ordered 2 skewers on 1 skewer, and then the seller behind the counter greeted him and grilled him, asking what he was doing, working as a courier. Sora grabbed his food and beamed, telling his friend CL that the vendor had thrown in a free skewer. Then he turned to me and told me to wait for CL. CL didn't even wait. He lunged for the meat, but Sora snatched the food out of his mouth in time and demanded he stop. Since Sora yanked the skewer, he brushed his clothes with it and the dirt immediately stuck to him. Sora didn't even flinch. He slammed on purification magic right away, and his clothes came out spotless, like they'd never touched a speck of dirt. Sora whipped his head around when someone shouted his name. 2 girls burst in yelling, "Sora, we're here!" Then demanded where he was heading today, and when they leaned in, they realized the litter reeked of meat. But Sora couldn't take his eyes off the girls. He stared nonstop. The girl leaned in and asked Sora what was eating him alive and why he kept staring at that castle like he'd just seen a ghost. Sora's nerves spiked, and he quickly shook his head. "No, it's fine." The guy stared at the castle and felt the memory hit him like the day he got dragged into this world. The girls pressed him again. "Where are you headed?" And Sora shot back, "I'm going to gather herbs." A month ago, right there in the castle, the king scanned a handful of guys and flat out told them it was awesome. He grinned and thanked every single person who showed up for his call. The king crowned them the 7 heroes, but Sora's body went tight with tension. The guy was completely lost, spinning in circles trying to figure out where he even was. Sora snapped back to reality. He was sure he was on the train, barreling toward the high school entrance ceremony, and that was 5 seconds ago. Suddenly, Sora spotted a blinding flash of light, and the next second, he was already there. No time to react. The king declared, "This is Alicia's kingdom, and I rule it." He swept into his castle and shouted, "Brave heroes," calling the guys by that name. The king leaned in and swore he needs them to crush the newly resurrected demon king. Sora was shaking with fear, and once again he rushed to the king to make sure he'd said it right. The king chuckled softly and said his shock was completely normal. He told them, "First, every single one of you has to reach out and touch the ball sitting on the counter." The king pointed to a guy named Xiong Menalze and told them to start with him. He pressed his hand to the ball bam, fresh info burst into view, and it revealed his goal level 40, where he needs 2 sword kings. He wielded razor-sharp sword skills and a bloodthirst that kept everyone frozen, backed by brutal body strengthening, lightning-fast thinking, brutal intimidation, razor insight, and the kind of one-punch knockouts that shut any fight down instantly. Sion couldn't stop smiling and blurted, "So what's your job?" Then he heard King of the Sword, and his eyes lit up. He didn't even know who that was, but it sounded insanely powerful, and Sora thought it was awesome too. Like one of those RPG titles. The king declared that this status was seriously impressive. He spun toward the brave heroes and demanded they hear the king out, then said, "This is what they call the status bar. Every time the heroes get summoned, they roll in with top tier status and a ridiculous load of skills. The king begged for the 7 heroes to unleash every last bit of it against the Demon King. The king gathered them and shouted that every single one of them was special handpicked, destined to become heroes, and chosen by fate itself. Sora froze in shock and grilled the king, asking, "So you're saying I'm the chosen one?" One of the girls was freaking out, desperately wondering what she had, while the other girl stood tall and said, "All right, I'll go next." Hanging among the other heroes were the Mage King, the Saint, the Spirit Mage, the Paladin, and the Swordsman Master. Then they learned everyone's status in an instant, thanks to the balloon. The guys were totally shocked by those results, and Paladin straight up asked if they were the real heroes, and honestly, that was hype. Sora tensed up fast, staring at them like, man, they're seriously cool. After a couple of minutes, the king snapped his fingers with a clap and the whole room's attention snapped to him. He claims the whole world is pure magic, and every hero people praise. Yeah, he swears they're all top tier. The king told them, if you need it, just say Ava, and then open the status screen to check it. Then the king jabbed his finger at Sora and declared it was time for the final hero. Only Sora's stomach dropped, because he instantly knew his name was next. He stared at the other guys and felt it. Everyone had these insanely cool jobs, and now he was determined to land one too. He remembered how he teaches his friends, and maybe this time he'll end up with a priest, so that's exactly what he's about to figure out right now. Sora Fujimiya lunged out, slapped the ball, and made contact. While the truth behind him was wild, he had no profession, so he was straight up unemployed. He didn't have a level either. His power, brains, stamina, speed, agility, and luck all sat at level 1. And from the skills, he only learned how to walk, so he wouldn't get worn out just by moving. Every hero and even the king whipped their eyes to Sora right away, stunned to see those indicators. Sora was fuming because he had no level and no job to show for it. He finally clocked the truth. His whole status was just straight up garbage. Sora instantly clocked it. His big skill was just walking. Sure, that sounded convenient at first, but you can't march into the Demon King's court on excuses like that. The king stayed silent for a beat, then turned to the others and started grilling them about the litter's status. After the talks wrapped up, the king shot to his feet grinning and said, "This time, there are only 6 heroes." Then he waved them over and pointed straight to where they had to go for the welcome banquet. Except Sora practically burst with excitement and blurted, "What about me?" The king snapped his gaze to the others and said, "If you want to get back to your homeworld, you'll have to beat the Demon King and rip out his magic stone." The king knew this trip would be deadly, but before anyone gets hurt, they'd get one break, one holiday for heroes only. Sora was crushed by those failing results and furious he still got shut out of the hero team. A guard came marching up to him. He told Sora he was heading there. Then the guy just stared back in total silence. The guard yanked the hall door open and marched Sora inside, while the other 6 heroes kept their eyes on him. The carriage hauled the guy straight out of the castle and toward the gate, and the coachman shot through the gates, then slammed on the brakes and stopped. That guy got dumped out of the carriage like he didn't even matter. At first, the guy crumpled to the ground, then the coachman hurled a sack of money straight at Sora. Then the carriage tore off, and the gates slammed shut tight right in front of the litter. Rage boiled in him when they summoned him like some so-called 7 heroes pickup, then brazenly threw him out and left him to rot on the street. Sora had no idea what the hell was wrong with them. He grabbed the bag the coachman tossed to him and tore into it right away, and I couldn't help wondering, did they pay him enough, or was he about to get screwed? He dumped every last coin onto the ground, and there it was, 2 shiny silver coins and 10 copper ones. Sora fumed at the twist and couldn't stop thinking, what do I do now? Then boom, his eyes snapped to something. He stared out at a huge jam-packed street, packed so tight with people, it felt like the whole city was breathing on top of him. Sora thought he'd already witnessed the world at its most beautiful, and then this view hit him like a lightning strike, completely stealing his breath. He took one look down the street and realized every house was built from solid brick and stone. Sora also clocked something wild. Everyone was dressed in bizarre, out-of-place clothes. Then it hit him. This wasn't just close to the game, it was dead on exactly the same. Sora sat right in the middle of the bustling crowd on the street, and pretty soon the stares of everyone around him started burning into his skin. Sora started to fumble, nerves crashing in fast as that uncomfortable feeling took over. He bolted the second the moment hit, streaking past every person in every direction, and Sora hurried to apologize to anyone he might have accidentally shoved. Sora sprinted, panicking as he pictured getting tossed out of the castle in front of everyone out there in the freezing cold, wearing clothes that were definitely not enough. He sprinted to a place that felt safe to him, far from everyone, then dropped to the ground and clawed at his breath. Sora's chest tightened with sadness as the truth hit him. He was totally alone now. But somehow, the guy still didn't get what he was doing or what he needed to do next. Suddenly, thoughts ripped through his mind, and he blurted, "Come on, yeah, his skills might be trash, but that doesn't mean he is." He stormed through the royal court and the hero group, barking at everyone involved, calling them bastards. I remember this. If he wanted that status to show up, he had to shout the words, VRE, open the status. Then it finally worked, and the status bar popped up right in front of him. He stared at those low scores again, snapped, "That's bullshit," and just wanted his numbers to be higher than they were right now. Then, out of nowhere, his eyes locked onto one of the indicators. It was an experience counter 996 points out of 1,000, like the game was screaming, "You're almost maxed." Sora suddenly realized his description had been totally rewritten. In Sora's skill description, it straight up says every single step he takes hands him 1 experience point. So the number of steps from the castle to where he's standing right now got turned into an experience, and it hits him with a full 996 points. Still, he couldn't shake the question what would happen to him if he managed to score 1,000 points, and that thought hit him hard. Suddenly, an intense smell hit him like a punch. Sora swore the street smelled straight up delicious, like every corner was packed with food stalls. Right then, Sora felt his stomach start that pathetic, loud rumble like it was begging for food. He blurted that all he could think about was devouring food, and the moment he remembered he skipped breakfast earlier that day, regret hit him like a punch. Suddenly, the guy snapped his gaze toward a man striding up to him. A huge brute towered there, clutching a giant kitchen knife in his hands, and then he flashed a crooked grin at the guy like nothing about him deserved kindness. This snapped Sora into full panic. What did this guy want from him, and why did he come at all? The man was convinced Sora's doorway was his, and that rage is exactly what lit the fuse. So he lunged in, shoved his face close, and with a shaky hand he blurted to the guy that he had no idea what he was even accused of, yet he still threw out an apology. Out of nowhere, Sora watched the man snap his hand up and swing straight at the guy. Then the guy shrieked at the top of his lungs in pure panic. Right then, a juicy barbecue skewer popped in front of the guy's face like it came out of nowhere. But Sora himself felt on edge. He never saw that outcome coming. The man grinned at the guy and told him it was barbecue on a skewer made just for him. And then he leaned in like, "So you're the beggar, right?" Still, he laughed it off. Everything was fine because that barbecue was going to be paid for by another man. So they both froze, replaying what had just happened, only to realize this guy wasn't dangerous at all. He was just painfully kind. Sora refused that free kebab, so he marched up to the guy and told him, "I've got my own money." He dumped everything onto the table and admitted he wasn't even sure it would be enough to cover the meal. The man tried to reassure Sora that everything was okay and that he didn't need money at all. Yet, the other guy kept pressing him, begging for forgiveness again and again. Sora said that if the money he handed over wasn't enough, he'd figure it out for sure, no backing down. The peasant rubbed the back of his neck, panicking, and blurted that no way, there was way too much money. If this were any other city, Sora would have gotten robbed already, and then the guy snapped that he'd finally show him how to count money the right way. He broke it down like a rule of the universe. 100 ordinary ones equal 1 copper, 100 copper clinks up to 1 silver, 100 silvers forge 1 gold, and 1,000 gold gems turn into platinum plus. Every one of his skewers cost 1 copper and 8 ordinary coins. The man straight up said he was stocked and ready food was covered. Sora thanked the man for the help and for breaking everything down, and the man shoved a skewer into his hands like, "Yeah, I've got no clue where you came from." Then added, "Just be careful." He took 1 step and his eyes snapped wide open. Sora noticed his level jumped again, and it hit him. Leveling up was handing him a skill point. His experience bar now read 0 out of 2,000 with just 1 measly point. Still, Sora couldn't shake the question. Did only he see his status, or could the others spot it too? Sora realized he had skills ready to go for rock assessment blocking, night vision, body strengthening, healing magic, magic manipulation, and detection. So he figured those were exactly the ones he could unlock by spending his skill points. The man clocked Sora's worried eyes and snapped, "What's going on?" But Sora panicked and shot back, "No, nothing like that." Sora figured it would be something easy, then the guy hit the assessment and a window sprang up where he typed the question he'd been itching to use his experience points on. He said, "Yeah, I want it." And Sora's eyes practically popped in shock. Sora stared at his skewer and realized it was wolf meat on a stick demon food, fresh and top-notch enough to make his mouth water. Sora could spot the exact meat and judge its quality just by looking, and that skill came in insanely handy. Sora believed that if he grabbed enough skill points, he'd finally unlock more than just the grade, he'd learn every other skill too. The man stared at Sora, stunned by the smell. And just like that, he snapped back to reality and hurriedly thanked the seller for the food. So Sora decided to take a bite of the wolf meat, and the moment it hit, his eyes popped wide in shock. He took 1 bite, totally wrecked by the flavor, and swore this dish was unreal. No way it was that delicious. That meat looked plain on the outside, but the moment you bit in, it was juicy and bursting with flavor. And the spices and marinade hit it like magic, turning that demon meat into a feast he couldn't stop tasting. The man clocked Sora's bright, slightly anxious face and snapped into a dead serious expression. Then the guy threw an apology out, muttering that he hadn't eaten in ages. And just like that, the man burst into laughter. The seller leaned in and told Sora he could nail his meat's flavor with the first bite, and that the best chefs were already hunting down whatever secret made it so perfect. The man pointed at him like, "So what's your name?" And the guy shot back, "Sora." The seller leaned in and asked Sora if he was dealing with a rough life right now, and then straight up offered the guy his help. This threw the guy for a loop. Still, Sora dug in and kept devouring the kebab like he was unstoppable, shouting Fontoli kebab with pure excitement. After a bit, the guy wiped his mouth, finished it all, and told the seller, "That was seriously delicious." When Sora started to slip away, the man thrust a robe into his hands and Sora's mind raced, hoping he hadn't drawn too much attention in all that crowd. He was genuinely relieved, because this was the kind of person who stepped in to help him himself. During the talk, the seller sized Sora up and said he'd better buy clothes, because Sora looked seriously out of place, then shoved a note into his hands and told him exactly where to go. Sora realized he wasn't even tired after crossing the entire city, and that's when his curiosity snapped into gear because the walking skill was obviously doing something insane. Sora marched up to the building and demanded to know what it was, because the clothing store was supposed to be right here. Sora stared at the sign, but the language was a total mystery he couldn't crack. Right out of nowhere, an inscription flared up in front of him, stamped directly over the signboard. This building was a sewing shop. Sora couldn't shake the fear that he might be the only one who saw it. Sora pushed into the sewing shop, and that's when a sweet girl greeted him and told him they had a visitor. "You can come in and take our measurements." The girl clocked in, and it took her a full hour to get the job done. After a while, the guy stared at his own reflection and went wide-eyed, like, "Wait, this is exactly like an RPG." She was thrilled with what she pulled off, and she practically beamed when she said, "Yes, these clothes are perfect." Then she stitched them with zero guesswork, right to his exact size. Then the girl leaned in and told Sora, "Oh, and those old clothes of yours are made from top-notch fabric, so I want to buy them." Sora froze, shocked to the core, and blurted out, "Are you serious?" Sora walked in to buy clothes and somehow stormed out with his pockets full of money. After a bit, Sora shot back to the seller to proudly show him the new clothes. When the man spotted Sora, he burst into laughter and said everything was different now. Sora snapped back that it was all because of him, then he thanked the salesman for lending him the rope. Sora shoved the clothes into the man's hands and asked, "Can you help me out somehow? I really want to repay you." The guy burst out laughing and told Sora, "Don't worry about a thing." Sora said, "I'm still insisting on it," and the guy's cheeks burned with embarrassment. Then he shrugged and told him, "If you want, I can deliver the meat." The seller pointed out a hotel tucked behind the hill, run by his friend Ali, and Sora instantly snapped, "Yeah, let's do it." Sora told the man he was only searching for a place to stay, and the man nodded like that was perfect, because Ali was about to feed him. Sora turned from the counter, bowed his head, and thanked the man for taking care of him, calling him uncle, but the seller yanked the guy back and demanded he come return for a bit. He grabbed Sora, told him to pick up a frying pan, and marched beside him because this was the gift he was claiming. Sora stared in shock and demanded if he was really serious. Sora thanked the man for the help and said he didn't have a backpack, but the seller snapped back instantly. "Then grab yours, and don't forget binoculars to stare at the stars." And before Sora could even blink, the man threw in a boomerang and a security bell too, just in case something nasty shows up at night. So I shot back that he couldn't haul it all because that place has a whole mountain waiting for him. Sora halted mid-step, and hope sparked. Maybe his skills could still pull this off. The guy confidently told the seller, "Yeah, I can pull it off for sure," and the man's jaw dropped in pure shock. Sora snatched the bulging backpack, slid it onto his back, and got ready to move. The salesman snapped at him, telling him, "No way, you don't need that, you'll break your back." Still, Sora shoved his shoulders back and lifted his chin, staring proudly straight ahead. This left the man completely stunned, because he couldn't wrap his head around how powerful that guy really was. Sora felt that crushing weight of his heavy backpack finally vanish as he strode forward. Sora finally wove the clothes he could buy, went back to the salesman and bowed him with thanks. Then the salesman, still flustered, nodded along and asked Sora to return to him later. And then Sora hauled this massive suitcase and accidentally poisoned himself during the trip. A monster mountain towered in front of him, and the hotel sat right on the peak like this wasn't just a hill, but the real deal, and Sora couldn't help thinking, some places measure things differently. Sora was dead certain that the old one would have thrown in the towel ages ago, but right now, because he's so good at moving on his feet, he feels like he can lift the whole world. Sora snapped his head up and froze right above him. Sat a giant bird, its wings blazing with pure beauty. So we used his assessment skill on the bird, and boom, a status bar slammed into view right in front of him. It pointed to a rainbow bird, one that only hatches when the heat hits hard. And somehow, her breasts were glowing at a blazing 95 degrees. Sora froze in shock, swearing this was the first time he'd ever seen anything like that, because the world keeps throwing brand new wonders at him. Sora grinned and rode his way across the bumpy rocks over a little river, and the guy confessed he couldn't hide how excited he was. Sora swore his walking was worthless. Then, reality flipped the script and proved it was exactly the killer skill he needed. After Sora was tossed out of Alicia Castle, he had no clue what to do next or where to go. But along the road, kind strangers stepped in to help him, and they even fed him with the most mouth-watering food. And the coolest part, this whole world was brand new to him, like he'd just been dropped into the unknown. Sora didn't see it coming, But somehow, he can't help loving this world anyway. Suddenly, Sora slammed the brakes and shock flared in his eyes. The guy stared ahead and spotted a massive city looming in front of him. The guy couldn't stop staring at how breathtaking this place was, and Sora swore he'd been tossed into this world for no reason at all. Then they hurled him out of the castle and he didn't even have a clue what to do next, because the whole thing felt unreal, like his life had been ripped out from under him. But now he looks ahead and that glimpse gives him a surge of confidence to keep going. Sora leans on her walking skills and barrels through this breathtaking world, soaking in every moment. This is the tale of a forced conscripted nobody who refuses to stay stuck and searches for what he truly wants in this world. Meet Sora, and yeah, this dude completely changes the whole travel experience. But then the status bar flashes his experience counter just hit 0 out of 3,000 and only 2 experience points show up. After what felt like forever, Sora finally jolted awake in this tiny house and stared out the window. He realized yesterday someone really yanked him into this world. So yeah, it wasn't a dream. Sora stretched, swore this had to be his very first morning in this brand new world, and then started pacing through his head where would he even begin today. Sora decided to kick off his day by hunting for a job. Sora shot back to the street where he already knew a familiar man was selling. He flashed a grin, greeted the salesman, and shouted "Uncle," like he always did. The man shot him a friendly greeting and shoved a skewer into his hands, asking if he wanted it. Sora nodded, said, "Yeah," and took a bite, and the guy thanked the seller like they just struck gold. Sora strode up to the salesman and told him straight up he was hunting for a job, only for the man to cheer that he was doing great. Then the seller leaned in and asked what Sora could actually do. Sora mulled it over, stuck on what to say, and couldn't find the words right away until the seller clocked his hesitation and said, "I mean, alchemy? Or yeah, like potions?" Sora mulled it over one more time, then shot back, no, he couldn't do something like that. The peasant leaned in and said, "There's one place where you don't need those special skills you're bragging about." Sora leaned in and demanded, "So where are you talking about right now?" The man said this was the kind of place where anyone could land a job, no matter what they were good at, and the seller was convinced Sora would walk in and find exactly what he'd been searching for. The man told Sora, "You've got to march down the main street and keep heading west. Right there, a massive building stands, walk right in." As soon as Sora arrived, he stared at the building and realized this was where the Adventurers Guild lived. Sora looked at it with pure wonder, and you could tell it felt like an RPG all over again. That guy got totally hooked on figuring out what they were, for real. So he clenched his guts, stepped inside, and went hunting for the truth. Sora pushed into the guild and found men duking it out, while the other adventurers screamed at them to tear each other apart. A dark-haired man leaned in and bragged that he was about to climb all over his opponent. Then the other guy snapped back, "You're a piece of shit." Suddenly, the brawl flared up again. One man fired a question at his opponent. "Why'd you climb up to me?" And then, BAM! The next fist slammed straight into Sora's head. The man started hurling brutal insults, and the moment the hit landed, Sora himself crumpled to the floor. Sora's tears burst out as panic hit him. This wasn't at all how he pictured this place. But then, boom, Sora was in trouble again. Books crashed down on him, and he snapped his head up, baffled. A girl working at this guild spotted her mistake. She dropped the book straight onto the guy, and she immediately blurted out apologies, mortified. The girl asked the guy if he's brand new to the guild, leans down to size him up, and then right on cue, her books tumble back onto Sora. The book swallowed the guy, and the girl hurriedly apologized to him again. Sora dug his hand out of a mountain of books, then told the girl, loud and clear, that he wanted to join the guild. Mikaru Yup, the receptionist behind the counter, looked Soru dead in the eyes and said she was really sorry, because right now, they're busy flipping through the inventory of old books. Sora told Makaru, "It's fine, I'm okay," but Makaru just stared like, "You're adorable, you clumsy mess," only for Makaru to cut in again and insist, "No, nothing is okay." But Sora shifted gears and told Makaru he'd heard a rumor he could land a job in the guild. Mikaru shot back that if this was the guy's first time here, he'd have to register first, and then the girl thrust a knife and paper into his hands, telling Sora the card wouldn't take a stamp until some of his blood hit the page. He froze in shock, then still slashed his finger and let one drop of blood hit the card. Then the blood started creeping across the sheet, and after a short wait, the registration was finally completed. The card listed her as Sora and stamped the Guild of Adventurers of the Kingdom of Alicia right on the bottom. Sora stared at his card, eyes wide, then shot his finger toward it like he'd just uncovered the shock of a lifetime. Makaru snapped that his rank is E now, and that means the card turns white. Sora shot the girl a surprised look and blurted out what she meant about the ranks. Then Mika simply said, "I did." Mikaru explained that the guild runs on a rank ladder from E all the way up to S, where S is the top seat and E is the absolute bottom. Makaru demanded that the guy come over and inspect the wall. The girl told Sora that every order was coming straight from the city folks and the nearby villages, then pushed him to pick any order he wanted and deliver it to the counter where it was already set aside for the guy waiting there. She also told him, "Finish it and you'll earn the points and rewards to level up your rank but mess up, and they'll hit you with a fine. And that warning absolutely stunned him. Sora shot back that he didn't even have a clue. Then the man stared at the chaos between the fighters and admitted he wasn't nearly as strong as them. Makaru shot back that he was all good and that these were just simple kid-level orders anyone could handle. Sora stared at the task wall, and the moment it clicked, he realized the orders came in so many different ways. Take those medicinal, magical herbs, yeah, the ones of the full moon, and then watch what happens. They get 2 silver coins, or if they're offered the tougher deal, they're sent to the next forest to hunt down a wolf and earn 6 gold coins. Sora figured he'd need a sword to take down the wolf, because he didn't think he could pull it off any other way. Out of nowhere, a massive guy loomed right behind him. He leaned into Sora and warned him not to dare face that wolf. Then the guy turned and immediately asked Sora if he had something he needed to tell him. Fear hit him hard, and he blurted, "No, I never even thought about doing that." Sora stared at that guy, feeling a creepy chill crawl up his spine, and he just couldn't figure out why this weirdo wouldn't leave him alone. The man slammed the task wall with everything he had, then leaned in and swore to Sora these tasks were perfect because this was a delivery. The guy's panic skyrocketed, so he piled on task after task, then Sora nodded like, "Yeah, you've got it. Take all these assignments." Sora turned away from the task wall and realized the guild was a terrifying place to be. Sora strode up to Mikaru and told her he'd take the assignments from here. Then Mikaru immediately started lining them up. But right away, she blurted out that he'd been running deliveries for the Merchants Guild, plus the pharmacist, and even 6 more stops. Besides that, Mikaru then pressed Sora, basically asking if he truly trusted himself to pull off every single one of those jobs. Sora thought he was only spooked by that guy, so he kept typing those tasks until he told Makar he wanted to learn the city, and then he dove into assignment after assignment. Mikaru snapped back that everything finally made sense, then marched up to a huge stack of packages and told Sora, "These are yours, your deliveries." Sora couldn't believe how many there were. So he scooped up every last piece of loot, packed it tight, and hauled it all onto his back. Then Mikaru finally told Sora to have a nice day, and the guy just assumed she was terrified to face these people. He slammed the guild door behind him, and for the first time, the pressure hit like a tidal wave. Japan didn't have many people like that, unless you counted school, but he kept his distance from them. Sora pulled out the map, unfolded it, and studied every detail while the guy muttered that everything in this world felt just a bit off. But deep down, worry gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the fear of whether he'd truly be able to make it there. Sora snapped his head left and right, forcing those thoughts to scatter. He said it with a grin, "Nah, he's got a job, and there's no time in his life to spiral into depression." Meanwhile, he kicked off the delivery, hauling 5 heavy sacks of flour for the Merchant Guild like it was his lifeline. The pharmacist gets 3 bundles of medicinal herbs, and then, right after that, a whole lot more. And with shaking hands, he delivered the final package. Sora stared at all the wild guilds in this world, and then, boom, he got treated to ice cream. He realized he wasn't even tired through that brutal day of work, and that's when he knew his walking skill was totally worth it. Soros got the order to pull up the status, and right in front of him, a status panel snapped into view. Sora realized that just by walking, he'd already hit the 6 level turns out every time he levels up. Each indicator jumps by 10. Sora thought yesterday all he had to do was take a measly 1,000 steps to level up, then today hit him with 7,000, and he was so close he could almost taste it. Sora realized that as his level climbs, skill points start stacking up, then he froze because he didn't have a single one, and the truth hit him, he'd spent it all yesterday. So I figured if he kept pushing forward like this, he'd soak up a whole new lesson. He was almost at the next level, and he couldn't stop now. After a while, Sora strode up to a huge building and shouted to the owners. Then the balcony door creaked open, inch by inch. A girl stepped out onto the balcony and faced him. He blurted out an apology, then realized the girl right in front of him was already asking what he wanted. Sora's stomach flipped with nerves, convinced she was nothing more than a pretty face, just like some actress selling a smile. Sora stammered that he'd got a letter meant just for him, straight from a man named Ray Renova. The girl instantly stumbled back a whole 10 steps the moment she heard that name. That did it. Rage flared in the girl's eyes as she jabbed her finger towards Sora and snapped that she was coming out right now, ordering him to stay exactly where he was. Sora was completely lost, so he slammed on the brakes, froze in place, and waited. Then the girl yanked the house door open, and Sora thrust a letter into her hands. The girl snatched it on the spot, then dove straight into reading it without even a second to breathe. She didn't say a single word to Sora, just slammed the door in his face. Sora froze for a few seconds, staring at that door like it just answered back. Sora snapped at the girl and reminded her, "You've got to sign right now." The girl yanked the door open again and demanded that the guy come back and let her know when the order was finished. The girl's emotions spilled over as she shoved the letter into Sora's hands and begged him to deliver it straight to Ray. The letter flat out claimed it was from Vanessa. The girl shot the guy a question, "Will you deliver this order?" And he answered, "Of course." And before you could blink, she shoved the letter straight into his hands. Sora headed back, mind racing through everything that just happened because the guy acted like he was just a career. yet Sora kept wondering what those mysterious letters were really about. After a bit, he stormed over to Rei's place and shouted into the doorway, calling out, "Is anybody home?" He eased the door open, peered from behind it, and spotted exactly who was coming to meet him. Sora demanded the man's name Rei, and the guy shot back, "Yeah, that's it." He shoved his glasses up and grilled the guy, asking who he thought he was. Sora shot the man an apology and told him he'd stick around, because he had to update Vanessa about the delivery of his letter. Then the man stared at Lee, baffled, like, "What letter are you even talking about?" The guy dropped into his seat and pulled out an envelope. Then Sora leaned in and said he'd brought a letter for Mr. Rei too. Sora shoved it into the man's hands and blurted that it was a letter from Vanessa. But Rei still had no clue what was happening, so he grabbed the guy and demanded, "Did you write to her?" Sora stared at Rei, totally confused, because he had no idea what the answer was to that question. The man's face started to glisten with sweat, and Sora clocked it instantly. He reminded us it was a letter from Vanessa. Rei instantly locked onto the girl, shot back that he'd written her that love letter while he was drunk, and the guy immediately panicked, denying it with all his might, cursing himself as a fool and insisting he never needed to do it. Sora snapped in shock, staring at it like it just shattered the rules because it was a love letter. But Rei wore shame-like armor and refused to say a single word. Sora thought it was all crystal clear, so Vanessa's reaction hit him like a slap. Then the guy told Rei it was actually a love letter reply, and Rei just nodded like, "Yeah, that checks out." Sora shoved the letter into Rei's hands, and then an unbearable silence slammed down between them. Sora told Rei, "I've got you, I'm in this with you," and the guy swore that was the right move. Rei still hesitated, then asked if Sora really meant it. Rei begged the guy for 1 minute because panic was eating him alive. Time dragged on, and Rei kept wrestling with that letter, trying to pry it open and decide whether he was ready to read what was inside. 10 minutes later, Rei tore open the envelope and dove into the letter's words. Sora couldn't stop staring at the letter's words, like they were begging to be uncovered. Rei flashed a smile and told the guy, right then, that everything was totally fine. Sora froze for a split second. Then he snatched Rei and started showering him with praise while everyone could see Rei's soul was slipping out of his body. Fear slammed into him, and the S-rank power zipped back into his body. After a while, Sora launched back into motion. He couldn't believe it on day one. He never even imagined he'd witness something like that. Sora strode up to the guild building, thinking all he had to do was step inside and report. Then he realized he'd actually had a really good day. As soon as Sora stepped just inside the guild, the other adventurers snapped their wary stares onto him, and the tension hit him like a fist. He pushed past everyone straight to Mikhar and realized, wait, did he forget all of them? Rage in his chest, he just had to report the assignments ASAP, so nothing could go wrong. Sora strode to the counter, shoved his documents in front of the girl, and then the guy leaned into Mikara. "I'm finished. Here are the invoices." Mikuru told that guy he was awesome for knocking out a mountain of tasks. Then she turned to Sora like, "And you're not even tired." He snapped back, "No, I'm not tired." Then turned to her and thanked her for looking out for him. Mikuru leaned into Sora and whispered that he'd spotted a letter from Mr. Rei among the orders. Then Sora just nodded and said, "Yeah, it's there." Mikuru leaned in and demanded the guy tell her how it all ended. He shot back that he honestly believed they'd end up together. The moment he spoke, the whole guild went dead silent, and every single eye snapped to Sora. He instantly felt like he just messed up and blurted the wrong thing. Suddenly, Sora got swept up in someone's arms, and they started tossing him into the air, laughing with pure joy. Sora couldn't even figure out why they were doing it in the first place. The adventurer yelled that he was crushing it and had already done an amazing job. Then Sora cut in and demanded, "In what way?" After a short wait, the guild had tables set to perfection, and the whole crowd burst into celebration. Even the girls at the counter burst into cheers, shouting that everything finally worked. At that moment, the guys were pounding shots, and one of them drunkenly swore Rei would kill him, so the other just laughed and said he'd need a drink for that. An adventurer rolled up to Sora and said, "We're celebrating and I'm treating him," but Sora couldn't wrap his head around why all of this had started in the first place. The man leaned in and told him the whole guild already knew about his race obsession. For 27 long years, he said nothing. Then boom, after all that silence, they're throwing a full-on celebration like it just changed everything. He patted the guy on the shoulder and grinned like, "I brought you two together, so yeah, I guess I'm basically Cupid now." Sora never ever saw this coming. Out of nowhere, that same morning man slipped up behind Sora and the guy froze with pure terror. Sora had a feeling it was Tin, but it was him again. Sora didn't want to terrify him, so he snapped into an apology and told the man, "I didn't mean to offend you." The man confronted him about how he tried to stop the wolf order, then nearly murdered him by loading the delivery, so the man snapped back, calling him a man of words. Sora snapped into a tense stance and stared at the man like he was trying to solve a mystery with his eyes. Sora demanded to know who the man wanted to kill, and the man snapped back that he didn't. He bowed to that guy and swore he only wanted to keep him safe, then told Sora to please understand before he went in and actually killed her. Another adventurer yanked the man off the litter and demanded what was so wrong with him, then snapped that he needed to learn how to speak correctly. So I figured this guy must have warned him in the morning because he tried to tell him it was dangerous. Sora judged them by nothing but their looks and jumped to conclusions. When that guy finally opened his mouth and talked to that man and the others, he realized they weren't the scary type at all. They were genuinely kind. Suddenly, the guild doors blasted open and a man rushed in with Ray cradled in his arms, shouting to the other adventurers that he'd brought the main star of the day. The whole crowd erupted, screaming Ray's name and cheering like they'd just witnessed a miracle. Sora couldn't believe it. The guild's people were ridiculously friendly, and before Ray could even catch his breath, they were already lining up drinks and throwing a full-on celebration for his victory. Sora figured everyone here was just glowing with good vibes, but then Ray clutched a letter in his hands and suddenly every person crowded around him, begging him to read it. Sora couldn't hold back. He decided to go congratulate Ray himself. Suddenly, the masked man shoved a drink straight into Sora's mouth, then shouted that he'd toss his hooves, but the masked man snapped back. Relax, it's just juice. After every wild adventure Sora lived through, the guy finally admitted the truth. He'd fallen headfirst in love with this world. A week later, Sora jolted awake in Ali's hotel, heart racing like something big was about to happen. He stretched wide, then flashed a grin and called out, "Good morning." While Sora threw himself into guild work and everyday life, everything about this world clicked into place fast. Then one of the guys started talking about booze from another country, saying Oscar's got a weakness for alcohol from the Republic of Eldo. All the adventurers pulled Sora into their circle and poured drinks with him, because now he was one of them, and that's exactly how he started making brand new friends. And that's when Sora finally clocked it. He'd basically built his very own courier crew. A message slid in with the guy's name, asking if he could deliver groceries for them, and right after that, the guild started getting orders meant specifically for him. Sora blurted out the command to crack open the status screen. He figured it out just thinking was enough to open it, and boom, a status bar lit up right in front of him. He couldn't stop grinning once he leveled up again. His understanding of the status bar skyrocketed too. The more Sora walks, the more his level shoots up and the assessment skill grows every time he puts it into action. Just like that, the indicator climbs and the number of skill points keeps rising under the same unstoppable rule. Sora saw he had 15 points and thought, "That's plenty." Then he made the call. He grabbed a brand new skill. He had skills on deck to study VORCORT assessment blocking, night vision, body strengthening, healing magic, magical manipulation, detection, and swordsmanship. Sora heard that detection skill and thought, yeah, that's awesome. But he had no idea what grade blocking even meant, so he figured it was smarter to stick with his pick, because he couldn't choose a skill anyway. Sora stormed out of the hotel, and the hostess was right there to greet him. She asked the guy if he was having a good day, and Sora snapped back, yeah, totally, because today was his day, the day he'd finally leave the city. The guy had trained up a whole toolbox VODL, 3 assessment, detection, body strengthening, simple magic, and first level magic manipulation, and Sora picked out 4 skills for himself. Detection lets you sense someone's presence before they even step into view, then leveling up beefs you up, boosting your strength, endurance, and agility each time. With simple magic, you can sling basics like purification or fire, and with magic manipulation, you finally learn how to use mana the right way. Turns out, those skill points don't just sit there, they level up the skills you've unlocked. And so far, Sora's been smashing them into his abilities non-stop. Sora finally clocked that he couldn't skip the basics, he had to test simple magic first, so he fired off a purification spell. In that exact second, the week-old dirt clinging to them vanished like it was never there. He was absolutely thrilled because this fresh start hit like a breath of new air. Sora barreled toward the Adventurers Guild. Makaru grilled the guy about whether he'd be the one picking plants, and he admitted it was his very first job outside the city, so she told him to give it everything he had. Makaru leaned in and demanded to know if Sora's gear could get the job done. Sora couldn't stop thinking about it, because he'd been craving this exact order since yesterday. Mikaru warned the guy that those dark forests beyond the village were crawling with monsters, wolves, and goblins, and told him to grab proper gear, and Sora shot back that he'd go buy something right away. Then Siphon caught him and demanded to know right away if his equipment was giving him trouble. The man leaned in and told him, "If you want, I'll show you one place." And just like that, Siphon and Sora tore off for there. Right when they stepped into the building, Siphon warned the guy, "This place has a rude owner, but their gear is top-notch." Siphon walked up to the owner and made his presence known. A man sat there puffing on a pipe like it was keeping a secret. Sora scanned the area and realized there were a ridiculous number of different weapons everywhere. Siphon leaned in and warned the owner, this little guy gets sent out of the city, so be ready for what comes with that. Sora took 10 steps, and the shop owner snapped his attention to the guy, asking what he could possibly do. Sora shot back that he honestly didn't know how to do much of anything, but he'd still love a sword or something like that. The owner stared him down, then demanded he swing that sword he was holding up in front of everyone. Sora nodded and agreed. Sora stepped up to him, eyeing how thin and shallow he looked and thinking, so this is the first time I'll ever pick up a real sword. He snatched it up and whoa, that thing hit his hands like a brick. Sora absurdly swung his sword like it was the only move that mattered. The owner snapped at him that it was pure squalor, and the guy immediately blew up, furious about the whole place. The man snapped that he had nothing else to say, warned that guys like him shouldn't even think about leaving the city, and said if he absolutely had to go, he'd better drag a muscular buddy along. The owner flat out told him the only weapon that could ever fit him was a knife. Sora, furious, demanded, "Why are you handing me a knife?" But the owner snapped back, "Don't you dare mess with it." Siphon leaned in and told Sora that everyone starts out the same way. Then he pushed him to grind, train hard, and level up. Sora snapped back to his level and shouted, "Open the status." A glowing status bar popped up in front of the guy, flashing swordsmanship in his skills. Sora's eyes lit up like, "Yep, I've got this. This is swordsmanship." He decided right then and there to learn it, and the moment it hit, Sora's body blazed with magical energy until everything abruptly went still. He couldn't believe it. This was really everything. Sora spun toward the shopkeeper and asked, straight up, if he could try the sword. But the owner snapped at the guy, calling him a fool, then shrugged like it meant nothing, saying he didn't care and could buy it himself if he wanted. Sora snatched the sword and yanked it high in an instant. He started swinging the sword like he'd done it before. Like this wasn't even the second time his hands had ever wrapped around a blade like this. Everyone stared at the guy in shock, and he couldn't believe it either, because his brand new abilities had just blown his mind. Sora leaned in and grilled the owner. "So what do you really think about your technique?" The owner snapped at him, "All you need is a gun," and Sora fired back, "Fine, but I also need armor or my whole budget is just one measly gold coin." The owner snatched it off the counter and stormed away from those guys. He told Sora to hang back right there, and Sora spun toward Siphon, demanding why he'd pissed off the owner. Siphon shot back, "No, that's not it." A split second later, the owner stormed over to the guys, armor clutched in both hands. He slapped the paper down on the table so Sora could snatch it up and read. The owner declared he had a sword, a breastplate, a knife, rations, bracers, and even FUD, and said that stash was perfect for a beast of a man. Siphon's whole body tightened as he blurted out that this was the sword of the Holy Kingdom, an absolute treasure beyond rare. Sora's eyes went wide, and he couldn't help grinning like, "That's so cool." The owner said, "It's roughly sharpened, but the shape is spot on, and he's betting this disorder vibe is exactly what the perfect guy would love." Then the man straight up asked what kind of fashion you'd call that joke about old people, and he felt like he had to prove his strength immediately. The owner told him the breastplate was crafted from dragon skin, so he could wear it under his cape without a shred of danger. The owner threw Sora one final lifeline and ordered them to tear everything down, line by line, so Sora dialed in, nodded, and agreed. Sora and Siphon headed back, and the guy lit up like crazy, calling himself totally cool. Then he thanked Siphon for showing him around. Siphon shot back that he'd got himself a beer now. Then he grabbed his group and headed to training to cheer Sora on. After that, they said their goodbyes and parted ways. Sora halted at the city gate that leads out, staring at it like it was a doorway into the unknown. This is the first time any guy will slip through this gate to escape the royal capital, so he throws a plea at nature, begging it to hold on until he's gone. The guard snapped his head toward Sora and demanded he step outside, and then, just like that, told him to show his ID. Sora flashed his card at the guard, convinced he'd finally become a real adventurer, so now he had to act cool. The guard scanned Sora's card, handed it back to the guy, and waved it off like, "You're good, go ahead and take it." Sora stared into the garden with a cautious eye, then thanked him. But the guard burst into laughter and told the guy to chill, then warned Sora to watch his step around monsters and those deadly poisonous plants. The guard snapped a command and swung the gate open for them. Right in front of the guy, the gate groaned open inch by inch, and Sora's heart leaped, praying this was it, that he'd finally escaped the capital. He scored an insane view of the mountains, like the peaks were right there to steal his breath. Sora squinted into the blazing sun and breathed in the sweet scent of the warm wind. Chained to his belt was a brand new sword and a whole set of fresh hope ready to ignite. He hauled himself up the hill and stared ahead, convinced that a brand new world waited there, packed with adventures just begging to happen. You grinned from ear to ear and dropped onto the grass, like the world finally felt right. He admitted he was still wiped out from all that running, and turns out his skill only works when he's actually walking. Sora dropped onto the grass, smiled, and happily decided to finally rest. Today's mission was simple: hunt down herbs, no excuses, and it'll take you about an hour to trek from the capital to the place where they grow. Soren's searching for medicinal herbs, the exact kind you grind up to brew powerful potions. Because his experience was only in career delivery, the guy figured he was feeling something huge, pure excitement. And if the card in his hands wasn't lying, Sora was already seconds away from the right place. He stared at the wild rows of herbs, stunned by the sheer variety, yet he couldn't figure out which ones actually healed. Sora snapped back to his skills and knew they could work. Sora snapped his assessment skill onto the plants and read every detail. In front of him lay a mountain of medicinal herbs, some normal, some top-notch, and some so excellent they felt unreal, plus full moon grass and even fake medicinal herb. Sora grabbed a top-grade herb and said this was how the test judged more than looks. It sniffed out real quality too. With that perfect skill in hand, he went from rookie to basically a pro at snatching up grass. Sora's heard a rumor that only top-tier herbs can brew the strongest potions, so he fired up his assessment skill and hunted down the best of the best. Sora spotted a whole stash of those herbs, and pure excitement hit him like a wave. He even remembered that full moon grass and mana were supposed to be in a different order, yet he didn't hesitate. He gathered them right there while he still had the chance. An hour dragged by, and Sora filled a huge bag with herbs, but when he finally stopped, his back started screaming in pain. Sora yanked open his status panel and saw his assessment and body strengthening jump to new heights. Assessment hit level 4 and body strengthening surged to level 2. He swears it's because he used that grading skill while he was picking the grass. Suddenly, Sora felt the hairs on his neck rise out of the bushes right behind him. Someone let out horrible noises. He spun around, instantly panicking, convinced he'd forgotten to activate the detection skill. Sora snatched his sword and snapped, "Who's out there?" to whoever was hiding in the bushes. A rabbit-ish creature burst out of the bushes and sprang straight at the guy. He froze in total shock, completely clueless about what was even happening. He swore that was the cutest creature on the entire planet. But the creature snapped into a rage of sad squeals, and the guy demanded what was wrong, so Sora figured it must have been starving. He yanked open his backpack, then barked at the creature, "Wait just a second." He was convinced his backpack held rations, so he yanked it out and dug in right away. Sora leaned in and asked the creature if it wanted a bite of his ration. The creature tore into the ration and swallowed it in a single, brutal bite. Sora looked absolutely moved and told everyone, "I eat so sweetly," and then the guy couldn't help but start watching the creature. For one shaky second, the creature tried to keep things calm, but the moment it breathed, fury hit. Sora snapped to attention, tense in his skin, and demanded the creature tell him what the heck was wrong with him. He decided to take the ration for himself and then admitted it tasted so brutally awful. Sora quickly apologized to the creature for dragging that nastiness into his life because he had no idea Pike was into that kind of filth. But before he could even finish his sentence, the creature bolted off so fast it felt like it was flying, and the guy's jaw dropped in shock. The creature started circling Sora, and the guy figured it was trying to tell him he was fine, so he burst into laughter and thanked it. Suddenly, the creature plopped onto his head and settled in like it owned the place. He snapped his head toward the creature and demanded to know what it wanted to do. Then the thing flat out said it wanted to head out with Sora. And when the guy heard that, his heart melted, because seriously, how was he this cute? Sora made up his mind. Yeah, they were going together right now. And the creature practically buzzed with joy, like it had just won the whole world. Sora stepped up to the creature, introduced himself, and told it he sincerely hoped they'd get along. Out of nowhere, he got hit with a strange new feeling he'd never even come close to before. He finally got it. This is exactly how his detection skill clicks into place. Sora spotted 6 objects bearing down on him from the south. Sora snapped to his feet in a daze, realizing they were right here. Then pure fear hit him hard, and the guy knew he had to bolt. Suddenly, people and a bunch of creatures barreled straight into the guy's path. Then the girls snapped into action, throwing themselves at the monsters and ripping them apart. White wolves thunder straight at the girls, and before they can breathe, they've backed themselves into a dead end. You could tell from the girls right away they looked tense, terrified, like something bad was about to snap. Sora snapped to attention and realized those girls had just been hit by wolves. These girls got completely boxed in by wolves, and they fought like hell to survive the monsters. Monsters piled up so fast they had no way to handle them. Sora stood right in front of them, convinced the girls were right there with him, ready to take on the wolves themselves. He scrutinized the girls' outfits and realized their gear screamed adventurers. Then he clocked the bruises. Every single one of them was wounded. One of the girls snapped her head toward her friend Chris and demanded she step back. Sora spotted that one of the girls was carrying 2 swords, yet she fended off the wolf with just one hand, and that stunned him completely. Meanwhile, the second girl looked like a magician, but she was visibly worn out, barely able to throw herself into the fight. In the guild's main hall, that guy remembered the stories about the wolves of this world insanely fast, so he figured, if I lock down their movement the right way, we'll be fine. Sora clocked that the first girl moved fast and carved up the wolves, but the pack was too massive, she just couldn't keep up. Then the guy finally snapped to it, this wasn't going to be easy for them. Sora stared at the girls and felt it cut like pain in his chest. Exhaustion had them running on empty, and he knew they just couldn't survive what those monsters were about to throw at them. Even with that sword girl guarding the magician, their end is only a countdown waiting to happen. Sora had to make the hardest choice of his life right now, no hesitation. If he dares to help these worn out girls, the White Wolves' relentless llamas might just kill him first. Sora suddenly realized he'd never fought a day in his life 15 whole years, and now his clock was ticking. What was he even supposed to do? Sora snatched his sword and made up his mind there was no way he wasn't going to help those girls now. One of the White Wolves lunged back at the girl, two blades out, so she snapped into defense and raised her own double swords to block. But the White Wolf swung that blow with brutal force, and the girl immediately lost one of her swords. Pure terror hit her all at once. He slipped right behind the girls and the wolves, making sure they never had a chance to catch him. The girl is totally lost on what to do next, and she has no clue how she's supposed to handle those wolves all by herself. But then, just like that, she spotted a new threat closing in fast. Two wolves charged straight at the girls, and pure terror hit them like a wall as everything spun out of control. Sora stood there, watching those girls like he couldn't believe what he was seeing, and he hated it on sight. Then his whole body went rigid, and his heart started hammering like crazy. One of the wolves, already stalking right up to the girls, got a sword to the chest, and the blade tore straight through the White Wolf's mouth. He couldn't lunge at the girls anymore. The girls stared in shock, totally lost about what had just happened. A grin lit up Sora's face as he drove his sword straight into the monster's mouth. The wolf slammed to the ground and snapped into action. Sora's eyes snapped wide. He finally understood he'd just done it himself, cutting down the White Wolf with his own hands. One of the girls snapped around and stared straight at the man who just saved them. Then she snapped her gaze back to the monsters, and with one savage swing, she struck down two wolves at once, slicing them clean in half. Right when the White Wolf was breathing down her neck, she slipped aside with one sharp step, and the wolf only tore past her, missing her by inches. The girl spun towards Sora and blurted an apology, then snapped, "The wolf's on your tail." The White Wolf barreled straight at the guy, and Sora froze like, "This can't be real. I'm about to get killed right now." Sora couldn't wrap his head around it. He was supposed to fight that White Wolf right now, even though he'd already tossed the sword away. The wolf kept closing in, and panic kept exploding in his chest. Sora flicked his eyes to the side and spotted the girl's sword lying just a short distance away. Then he remembered. That was one of the two blades she carried. Sora jerked sideways, snatched for his sword, only to find the wolf had already closed the distance. He snapped to the truth. He had only a few seconds left. Like one heartbeat, and now it was grab the sword and swing, or face death. Sora barely caught his breath, then drove the sword straight into his own belly. His hands started shaking so hard they blurred, and the tremors crawled through his whole body. Sora could barely process what he'd just done. He couldn't believe it. He'd actually beaten the White Wolves and come to the rescue of those girls who were in real trouble. The girls bolted straight for the litter, and the guy wiped out couldn't even process what just happened to him. The girls lit up with gratitude for Sora's rescue, and they couldn't wait to thank him. The girl with twin swords reached out to him and said, "We're still alive because of you," then thanked him, gripping his help like a lifeline. Her magician friend looked wiped out and told the guy, "You saved us." Sora was on edge after everything that went down, and the girl reached out her hand while the guy shot his back, then he returned her grip. A fierce warrior with two blades lunges in and hauls Sora up off the ground. The girl stepped up and flashed her smile. "My name is Rurika." And just like that, they were about to meet for real, then the magician girl chimed in, "I'm Chris." Sora strode up and introduced himself to the girls. Chris and Marika flashed the guy a sweet, knowing smile back. Even after that brutal fight, Ruriko still had the power to spare, and she barked that he should start hacking up the wolves before they spoil. Sora stared at the girls, completely stunned. He'd never once been involved in butchering animals before, and it felt completely unfamiliar to him. So Rebecca snapped to Sora that they were about to start butchering the wolves. Rurika shot in first and started cutting down the White Wolf, ice calm and totally sure of every move. But the moment she tore open the wolf's belly, she looked at the guy and saw his face fall. Something felt terribly wrong. Rurika leaned in and asked him what was happening. Sarah apologized to the girl and told her, "I only just became an adventurer, so this is all still new to me." Rurika demanded to know why he was getting his first fight right now, and the guy answered instantly by taking down two wolves. Sora mulled it over for a second, then shrugged and said it was just his rotten luck. Still, Sora's hands wouldn't stop trembling, and panic crushed his chest because that guy didn't just hurt something. He killed a living being, and there was no way Sora could shrug it off. But just like that, his mood flipped, and he let out a creepy, ominous laugh. Sora couldn't believe what just happened to him, and he guessed maybe it was pure admiration. He finally clocked it, that same wild, buzzing feeling he'd felt back when he ended the White Wolf. Without even noticing, the guy hucked the sword straight at the beast. Sora felt a sting of irritation and couldn't shake the truth. This wasn't like him at all. The guy was completely lost, not understanding what was happening to him or why he'd started acting this way. Rureka snapped to Sora and told him to stop overthinking it. Then she promised to show the dude exactly how to carve an animal carcass the right way, because monster meat costs a fortune, and for them, that means big, sweet profit. Chris, scraping together the last of her strength, staggered up to Rurika and offered help because Sora had never done anything like this, but Rurika snapped back. No, I'm wiped out. I need to rest now. Rurika fired off the message that butchering monsters is a core duty of any adventurer, so now that guy has to dig in and push harder than ever. Sora nodded along to her words and focused hard, tuning in as she worked. The girl flat out told him he'd have to tear out every organ first. Then Sora realized she was saying all this while Rurika was teaching him how to carve an animal carcass, and they started trading words, one term at a time. Then the girl leaned in and told him the truth. Rurika and Chris are a duo of D-rank adventurers, and today they've got one job: grab honey from Killer Bee. But as the girls close in on the hive, they spot a whole pack of white wolves waiting for them. Then Chris stormed into a monster brawl, and the magic let them dodge most of the wolves, but Chris knew his mana would run out before the rest of the animals. Ruraka replayed that moment with sorrow in her head, and her whole body still tensed like it was happening all over again. While the guys were tearing into the wolves, Rurika leaned in and asked, wide-eyed, what kind of punishment they'd get for failing to buy the honey. Right then, Sora realized now that his rage finally cooled, that he couldn't ignore what Rurik was wearing. He figured she was about his age, but he couldn't stop himself from wondering if her clothes showed off a little too much. When Rurika caught Sora staring at the girl's outfits up close, she snapped and asked him what he was looking at. Sora instantly started to panic, whipping his gaze away from the girl, and the guy shot back that no, he wasn't staring at anything or anywhere at all. Rurika flashed him a sweet smile and closed the distance, right up in his face. Then Sora froze, completely baffled, and turned beet red from head to toe. He turned away from her, and Ruka snapped at Sora, asking what the heck was wrong, only for Sora to awkwardly blurt out that nothing at all had happened. The guy started jabbing his knife into the white wolf's carcass like he couldn't stop, and he shoved the thoughts of Rurik to the side because he's telling himself he's not thinking about anything at all. Chris kept staring at the guy, and it totally fascinated her. Rurika yanked one of the white wolf's organs out of its body and thrust it towards Sora, telling him it was a magic stone, the kind that usually sits near the heart, and one piece of it could be worth a fortune. Sora stared at that wolf part and sickness hit him again. He clamped a hand over his mouth, face draining to bone white, and when Rurika asked what was wrong, Sora just couldn't get the words out. After a bit, the guys spread out every scrap of the white wolves they'd managed to snag on the right. Rurika's pieces sat there perfectly cut and clean, while on the left, Sora's results were so mangled they were almost painful to look at. Sora sank into despair after those results, and the moment he snapped, he hollered that he was nothing but trash. But Rurika stayed upbeat like always, telling that guy, everything's fine, because everyone needs reps, and with time, he'd get better and better. Rurika told the guy, now we just pack every last organ into the bag. Out of nowhere, Sora snapped into action and asked the girl if he could do it himself, and Rurika and Chris stared at him, totally baffled. Sora unleashed his cleaning skill. Everything around him started getting scrubbed clean, and the girl's clothes were dragged out from under animal blood splatters and dirt stains. Rurika and Chris stared in shock as he wiped out every bit of that dirt in just a few seconds. Sora grinned sweetly at the girls and said everything was finally set. Everyone was clean now. Rika stared in awe, like all the grime had vanished from their clothes. The two girls turned around and thanked him, grateful as can be. Rurika lit up because Sora could use the cleaning skill, and she couldn't believe how rare that was. Sora, though, blushed and asked Rurika if she was really telling the truth. Sarah couldn't believe it. He didn't even realize his purification skill was rare magic among humans, and the more she thought about it, the more she decided he should probably stay quiet about her. Meanwhile, the guy started stuffing up supplies, and Sora strapped everything onto his backpack. Rurika snapped with shock that the guy somehow crammed all their stuff into one spot. Then she demanded to know if he really meant to haul it all on his back alone. Sora just grinned back and said, yeah, it was no big deal, since it was his luggage. Sora snatched the backpack in one smooth move, hurled it onto his back like it weighed nothing, and told the girls, all right, capital time, I've got to go now. Sora sprinted toward the city. Then bam! He remembered his new friend, and when the guy spun around, he darted his eyes across the grass trying to spot him. Sora snapped to the truth he wasn't in that place at all, which meant he'd vanished to somewhere else. Sora snapped his gaze toward the capital and thought, despite every hardship he'd survived, his first trip out of the city had gone surprisingly well. The girls tagged along with the guy, and Sora felt the ride back grow weirdly peaceful. After a bit, Sora and the girls finally rolled into the capital, and the second they did, they sprinted straight to the Adventurers Guild. There, they were met with a burst of joy from Makaro, who lit up as he greeted Ruarika and Chris. But then she realized Sora was with them too. Rurika shot back, Yeah, he came back with us, and the girl added, we ran into each other by her order. Rarika slammed all their catch onto Makar's table and demanded, straight up, that they sell the wolf meat. Mikarua stared in shock at the mountain of meat and blurted that they'd managed to score so much. Then she tore into the bags, started prying them open, and inspected every piece of their catch. Mikuru asked the guys what this bag was for recycling, right? Then they had a ton of meat, so they dumped all that trash for free. The second Sora heard about the garbage, his body snapped into a full-on tense mode. Every girl's eyes snapped to the surprise guy. Rurika lunged in to back him up, and Makaru suddenly clocked it. This was all part of the plan. Sora dumped a huge bag of his catch right onto Makaru's table, and Makaru immediately pointed out the massive pile of medicinal herbs they'd found too, turning the girl's face into pure joy over getting everything they asked for. While Sora couldn't shake the thought that he still hadn't fully gotten used to it all. Meanwhile, Makaru stacked every last piece of meat onto the cart and declared, "That's it, we're done." Mikaru turned to the girls and demanded, "What's going on with the Killer Bee Sword order?" Rureka and Chris snapped with anger, instantly apologized to Makaru, and the girls marched up to the receptionist, telling her straight out they couldn't get any honey. Rurika snapped that wolves were the reason they couldn't finish the order at all. The whole guild snapped their heads toward the girls, and one stunned gasp ripped through the crowd. Right then, Sora couldn't help but wonder what the big deal was all about. A monocle-wearing man strode right up to the guys, and Mikaru's jaw dropped because she just spotted the guild master. The man spun toward Rurika and made it crystal clear every word was true, and those monsters were right outside the royal capital. Sora and the girls hit a total tanstop, like everything suddenly goes into overdrive. The guild master blared, "No wolves have ever shown up in that forest, so that place became the training ground for beginners," and then the man announced an urgent meeting, summoning every squad leader of rank B and higher. Every guild member snapped their eyes to the master. The guild master snapped his command to Mikaru, "Tell the other guilds and even the castle what just happened," and she swallowed her nerves and nodded, accepting the mission. The guildmaster stared those guys down and warned them to be super careful the second they stepped outside. Seconds later, the guys bolted out of the guild and into the open air. Sora spun toward the girls and said it all sounded way too important. Then Ririka shot back, "Yeah, I had no idea it would kick up this much chaos." Then her face lit up with a smile, and she said she was relieved they finally managed to sell the wolves' meat. Sora clutched the meat and told the girls he wouldn't take half the payment, because Mikaru never bought the part he'd already cut. Raraka shot back that it was all good. He'd already smashed half the wolves, so he was owed every bit of his pay. Rurika leaned in and asked the guy if he'd join them for dinner, because she had something burning she just had to talk to him about. The girl said, "There's a restaurant just nearby that cooks your food from whatever you bring." Then she nudged Sora to hand them his meat. Sora asked what they had, and when she explained, he agreed without hesitation. The guys traded goodbyes, and Rurik promised, "We'll go change our clothes." Then everyone nodded and agreed to meet up at the same spot tonight. As the girls backed away from him, Rirukat spun to Chris and demanded, "Why are you all so quiet?" Chris figured it out and shrugged like she must have liked him. Suddenly, Chris bolted and fled from Rurika, and when the girl tried to catch him, she realized he wasn't coming back. Sora watched the girls walk off together and couldn't help wondering what they were whispering about, because it looked like they were truly dangerously close. The guy just figured they came with their own squad. Sora couldn't stop praying his stats would finally level up, and Sora couldn't stop wondering if that was true. Could he really end up in the same squad as them? Sora mulled it over for a moment, then made up his mind and headed straight for the hotel. That night, the guys linked up again and barreled straight to the restaurant. Sora stared at the mountain of dishes and shot the girls a question. Did the chefs really cook all this using my meat? Rureka shot back that the local chef was basically a cooking god, and Chris jumped in too, saying they swing by that place sometimes. Chris watched Sora chew, and he could tell she had something to say, but she swallowed it and stayed quiet, and Rureka clocked every bit of her shyness. Rureka took one bite, and her face lit up like, "Wow, this is incredible." Sora backed her up, saying the boss basically turned garbage into something beautiful, and the guy laughed, realizing he sounded exactly like a restaurant critic now. Rureka burst into laughter and told him she was thrilled he'd love the dishes. The girl asked Sora about this place, and he admitted he had no clue because he wasn't even from this country. Sora swallowed, finished chewing, and said he could say that because it's so far out there that even the country's name wouldn't mean a thing to them. Rureka leaned in and grilled the guy, asking what pushed him to choose the life of an adventurer. So I snapped back that every crazy thing that happened in his life led straight to this moment. But in this world, he's determined to dodge every single trap, because this is the one dream burning in his heart. The girls ended up living with the guy in shocked disbelief. Chris grinned and told everyone he had the best job ever. Rurika said that if that's the case, they'll hop to even more countries too, so yeah, they're stuck staying longer than expected. The girls locked eyes, then turned to the guy and decided to hit him with a question. The girls leaned in and asked Sora if he wanted to team up with them. The guy jolted in shock and blurted out to the girls, "What's your squad?" Sora blurted, "I can't even dream about something like that. I'm stuck with an E rank." and the thought hit him he'd just end up being a burden to them. Sora said he was sure they'd track down adventurers who were way stronger than him. Rurika shot back, "Yeah, but we've only known each other for one day." Yet he still looked the girl straight in the eyes and seemed brutally honest, like he wasn't trying to play tough or fake confidence. "And Sora won't keep it secret when she has to step in and act?" Rurika said that's exactly why they could call him an honest man. So come on, they wanted to roll out and travel with him. Chris cut Rurika off and blurted out that she wanted to say these words, and Sora stepped up, thanking the girls and saying she understood because they'd meant it. Sora launched himself off the table and demanded the girls look after him. Rurika burst into laughter, then demanded he come back because she needed him to look after them too. Sora leaned in and grilled the girls about what they thought of traveling, while the guy snapped the question where they were from. Rurika shot back that they were from the Eldo Republic. The girl can't shake the feeling that this was the worst possible spot for their whole life. Sora couldn't stop thinking about the Republic of Eldo because in the audience, he'd learned it's one of the 7 countries that rule this world. And the books he studied in the guild laid it out plain. The whole world is split into 7 countries. The Borshala Empire is led by hardline supporters of human supremacy who actively shove their xenophobia onto everyone. Not as extreme as Borchalais, but the Kingdom of Alicia still backs the idea that humans are superior, at least partially. The Republic of Eldo is built by a multiracial people who respect each other together. And get this, there's a Beast Kingdom, ruled with an iron fist by the King of Beasts. A holy kingdom of Lady Wealth sits poised on the horizon, and these women are devout believers, faith in their goddess burning in every step. In EFA, the magical folk aren't just spell slingers, they're a powerhouse society of fierce researchers and master magicians. And the Royal Reeful, they're die-hard dragon fans. For ages, 7 great countries basked in peace until 10 years ago, when the Borshali Republic slammed the door on peace and declared war on the Eldor Republic. That war swallowed all 7 countries whole, and then the war drained the world dry until it could barely breathe. But the nuns of the Holy Kingdom of Fraulein swore their goddess had spoken straight to them and that the Demon King had risen. To slam the door on the monster armies, the 7 powers called a truce because they had to fight back and they needed time. Even now, monsters are surging out of the Dark Forest and they're unleashing fresh attacks on those 2 neighboring countries again and again. Sora couldn't stop wondering if those girls were from the Elder Republic. Then the guy pushed it further and told them it was all because of the war. Rurek snapped back that their village was gone for good, and if they wanted to stay alive, they'd have to hit the road and hunt for work. He hit the 10th step and suddenly realized every time they landed in a new country, they'd already survived a mountain of pain and it totally blew his mind. So he went back to the girls and promised them, straight up, that if there was even one way he could help, he'd go all in and do everything he possibly could. Rureka and Chris loved those words so much that they beamed at the guy, and the girls thanked Sora for backing them up. Rureka spun to Sora and grilled the guy, asking what his plans for tomorrow were. Sora figured he'd just make a few deliveries around town, but when the girls asked, he told them he was free. Rureka practically beamed, saying it was absolutely wonderful. She told him there was one thing she was dying to do with him, and then a sly little grin slid across her face. Sora got seriously worried and demanded to know what she was talking about. Once the guys finished eating, they split up and went their separate ways. Then the very next day, everyone showed up at the Adventurers Guild. In the Great Hall, Sora and Rurika stood face to face, each gripping a sword, while the crowd roared begging Rurika to cut down the kid, and someone dropped 3 copper coins at her feet. Rurika's face twisted with fury, like she was moments away from smashing everything around her to pieces. This totally freaked him out, and he blurted out, "What are you up to the girl." Rurika said she couldn't stop replaying that wolf fight the way he moved, like he was clueless, swinging like an amateur with zero clue where to land the hit. Sora's excitement skyrocketed. She was sure she'd been right, because he only knew how to swing a weapon the moment the thought landed. The guy started trembling like crazy, convinced a fight was about to explode. Rurika told Sora that if they jumped into a duel right now, it would benefit them all, and Sora tried to grab her attention, but Rurika shut him down, saying this wasn't the moment for conversation. Rurika shot up from the seat and barreled straight toward that guy. Rua launched himself from the air to strike, then snapped to attention. He realized trouble was crashing down on him right now. Rursha snapped and decided to throw the guy into sudden combat training, then she lunged at him, but Sora slammed his sword up in time and blocked the girl's strike before it ever hit. He fought tooth and nail to keep the line standing, despite the fact that it was only his first real battle. Rureka was overflowing with power, ready to smash that guy again and again, so she shoved Sora to finally go on the offensive and beat the girl, because he can't keep hiding behind defense like that. But Sora didn't answer her with words or even a single retaliatory hit, because he was laser focused on keeping pace with Ruruka's shaky, stumbling moves. Sora swore she landed 2 sword strikes at the same time, but the guy somehow still clocked it right when the girl's back was left wide open. Sora thrust his sword straight at the girl, ready to unleash a brutal counterattack. He grinned as his swordsmanship made his blade land exactly where he wanted it to strike. Zarurik swung one sword at the guy, but the girl whipped out a second blade from behind her back and blocked his chance to hit her body. Sora blinked in shock at the girl's sharp wit, but even so, fury still burned because his plan had fallen apart. Sora felt completely stunned by the result. Because Rurika didn't smash him with both hands like she'd first planned, she used one arm to shield herself instead. Rurika snapped into action to shut her opponent down, landing a strike that snatched the guy's sword and flung it high into the air. Sora swung his sword into sharp circles in the air, then crashed it straight down with a fierce rush. Right after that, his sword dropped off his hand and clattered onto the floor behind him like it had just been stripped of power. Everyone in the hall stared in shock, watching the battle twist and turn in ways no one saw coming. Desperation hit Sora like a punch. He crumpled to the floor, fists clenched in frustration, and all he could do was stare, stunned by just how incredible it was. He clocked it instantly. This was the D rank level, and right then, Sora knew for sure Rurika was absolutely deadly strong. Rurika snapped her head toward Sora and told him his speed was solid, but she tracked every single move. Then she praised him for trying to stab her in the back. But she said his weird, twitchy moves totally gave him away. Rurika actually praised the guy's fight, saying he handled her way better than she expected. Then bam! His friend CL came streaking past her out of nowhere. His eyes snapped wide the second he saw him there. He never in a million years thought he'd show up. Sora spun toward the creature and snapped that it was the thing from the forest. Rika stared at the guy, confused, and demanded to know what he was talking about. Then Sora realized it. In his gut, it looked like only he could see CL. CL shot straight at the guy's face and caught the moment his scream escaped. Sora whipped around to CL and demanded what had him so worried. And CL made it brutally clear that this was exactly the problem. CL vanished from the guy's view in the blink of an eye, and Sora was so shocked he couldn't even breathe. Sora dropped to the floor and snapped his head left and right, hunting for CL right then. Chris stormed up to Rurika and begged her to stop smashing the guy so hard. Rurika blurted out that she never meant to bring it this far. She was praying Sora would be alright. Then she spun to the guy and demanded, "Hey, are you okay?" Rurika leans in and asks the guy, "Hey, would you mind grabbing an order for the whole squad, like, as training?" Right then, Siphon slid up to Rurika and asked what she wanted to destroy for him. And the girl smiled sweetly that it was just combat training. So Sora immediately figured Siphon was doing him a favor. After a while, the girls and Sora hauled Sora right up to a giant task board. And Rurika leaned in and snapped that if he really wanted to go around the world, he'd have to level up and get stronger. Hiking could get them killed fast, so Sora snapped to attention and asked the girl, shocked, what she was really saying about the hike. Rurika blinked in shock when she realized the guy she'd met had never set up camp before, and Sora's face lit up as he told her, straight up, that he'd never actually done it either. The guy kept picturing what was out there for him to spend the night in the country, but since he'd never done it before, his excitement was through the roof. Russia scanned the tasks and snapped that it would take 3 whole days to reach the Goblin's lair from the city, perfect setup for the very first hike. Then the girl leaned in and told Sora he'd finally get a shot to level up his sword skills. Sora shot Rurika a grin and said he was relieved, then coldly reminded her they were too high ranked to be stuck with trash orders like this. Rushika fired back at the guy, acting like this was their way of saying thanks for helping them in the forest. Back then sweetened the deal with a huge reward for whoever took this order. Sora grinned, thanked the girls up and down for their help and support, and felt totally relieved. Rurika snapped back to Sora and shoved the paper into his hands, warning him that when you take long-distance jobs like this one, you're going to burn a lot of time on the road. The girl told them it would take 3 days to reach Rhino's village, and then another 3 days to march back, so now they had to scramble and pack food and medicine for a full 6 days. Rurika explained that the payout for this job was so big they could swallow every cost, and the girl practically begged the guy to take it seriously. The girl told the guy to hit the store and grab everything he needed, because tomorrow, they're finally setting off together. Sora shot them a grin, and the guy practically buzzed with excitement about going camping. Sora couldn't believe it either, but hearing them talk about it was weirdly fun. While everyone else was busy, Sora headed straight for Ollie's hotel. Right beside his bed sat a small bag packed with everything he'd need, supplies and medicines included for the road ahead. Sora sprawled on the bed, already dreaming about tomorrow when they'd all hit the road together, but even with 3 of them counting on luck, he couldn't shake the worry that something would go wrong. Sora blinked awake, convinced his brain wouldn't shut off because all those worries were frying him, and right then, he felt like a kid counting down to the school trip, too excited to sleep. Suddenly, a furry creature popped up inches from the guy's face. Sora spotted the CL again, and pure fear and shock ripped out of him as he blurted, "No way." Sora leaned in and demanded the creature send the power back again. No doubt, it's up there watching him. Sora flashed a grin and thanked CL for watching his back, while CL hovered right above him. Sora shot his hands toward the creature and blurted to CL, "Can you hear me?" Sora lunged to touch the creature, but his hand slipped straight through CL, and the creature's calm shattered as nerves kicked in. Sora was completely stunned because the man swore his hand just slipped right through him. CL pouted and started swinging left and right like he was itching for a fight. CL kept sulking and turned his back on Sora. While the guy threw out an apology to the creature, Sora tried to explain that he just looked so soft, and that's why the guy wanted to touch him. Still, Sora leaned in and told CL he was genuinely thrilled to see him again right now. His words started to tumble and drag, and then he finally shut his eyes slowly, like the world was fading out. Sora nodded off, and CL dropped out of the air like a falling shadow, landing right beside the guy and settling in. Then they both crashed out right next to each other, because sometimes the best cure is a friend you can cuddle up with. And that's how the long-awaited Sora campaign kicked off with the girls right at the gate, where Rureka tilted her face up to the sky and called it the perfect morning for a hike, while all of Rureka and Chris's stuff sat snug in the same backpack strapped to the guy's back. But Sora couldn't shake that night from his mind. He kept thinking about CL, and when morning finally hit, he panicked that this adorable creature wasn't there anymore because he was desperate to see it again. The guard spotted people closing in on the city exit and snapped, "Show us your IDs." The guys handed the guard their cards and he started scanning them right away, spotting 2 D ranks and 1 E rank among them. Then he warned the group, telling them he figured they already knew what had just gone down in that forest and to stay sharp and be careful. The guy shoots the guard a confident grin and says, "Yeah, we know. Don't worry. We'll be careful." And right then, you can tell they're not scared of the monsters lurking outside the city walls. The guard eyed the guys, told them to make the most of it, then threw in a final shout of good luck, and with the guard's full backing, the adventurers launched their campaign. While Sora stared at the map, he figured their trip to the village would take 3 days. Maybe it was because monsters had started showing up at the herb spot. But after 2 grueling hours on the road, the guys hadn't run into a single soul. Sora and the guys strode down a tiny path, surrounded by massive open fields, and when he spotted the plants along the road, he skidded to a stop right beside them. Sora swore there was a soft blanket of fluffy grass right ahead, and he couldn't stop himself from wanting to leap into it. Then he glanced at the girls, realizing they'd come all this way for him, so he refused to waste their time on something as small as that. Rureka caught Sora locked onto that field of plants, just staring like it held the answer. She clocked what Sora was going for and bolted straight into the fluffy field, and the girl started spinning like it was nothing. Chris and Sora just stood there, stunned at how wildly unexpected it all was. Ruraka was flat out thrilled, sprawled in the grass like she'd found heaven. Then she spun toward the guys and insisted they had to try it too, because for her, it was unbelievably amazing. Sora beamed with pure joy. Of course he wanted to do it, but Chris stared at Rurika in disbelief. But in the next second, 3 guys were already sprawled in the soft grass, staring up as they saw it. Yeah, the sky really was that beautiful above them. Rurika smiled like everything was perfect, stretched out, and practically gushed that today was pure magic and that they were insanely lucky to be camping together. Rurika vanished from the guy's sight in an instant. She rolled behind a tiny hillock and she screamed that she was dropping fast. Then, from Rurik's sounds, it hit a swamp. A second later, she peeked over the mound and the girl was a filthy mess. She blurted that she was in excruciating pain. The moment Sora and Chris spotted Rurika, their bodies went rigid. Rurika blurted out that she was mortified the guy saw her like that, and Sora snapped into action right away. He used his cleaning skill, and in a flash, every single one of Rurika's dirty things turned spotless. Chris flashed a sweet smile at the guys, but she still leaned in and snapped at Sora that this reckless move was a brutal waste of mana. Sora opened the status window to check his stats, and there it was, crystal clear. Using even simple magic made him burn MP, and that hit him with pure confusion. That guy had a whole toolkit already: simple magic, assessment, detection, body strengthening, and swordsmanship. Then Sora realized something. Once he'd mastered those basics, he figured out that skills come in all kinds. This is the whole skill lineup for MP skills that burn SP, skills that use nothing at all, and everything in between. When Sora fires off simple magic, his MP drains fast. Because assessment and perception are active skills, every time he uses them, they burn SP. Body strengthening and swordsmanship are passive skills, so they don't burn MP or SP yet. The guy's convinced MP is for magic, while SP fits stamina and focus, and honestly, he's right. Your SP level still matters a lot. Sora also figured out this scary truth. If you keep using that skill until your whole MP or SP bar is completely gone, the user just collapses and blacks out, and the guy proved it by testing it on himself. But there's one tiny detail nobody notices when Sora moves. His skills never burn SP, and that's exactly what he figured kept his detection switched on non-stop. He figures SP is basically an endurance meter, and as he walks, he never so much as gets tired. Even if Sora stacks 2 or more skills at once, the SP still starts draining, like when he changed detection with evaluation, but yeah, it still proved really useful for him. Sora couldn't believe he had skills this precise. He thought it was pure magic, like a miracle walking around in human form. Right then, Ru-Ur could spot a fluttering swarm of beautiful butterflies dancing over the grass, and her face lit up as she stared in awe. Then she said, straight from the heart, what they had here. The girl went, they're so bright. And then she grilled Sora and Chris about why they were acting like butterflies. Sora couldn't resist, so he checked it out and used his assessment skill to see what it really was. Right in front of him, there it was, like a flying insect made of grass. Only it wasn't an animal at all, but a plant native to the kingdom of Alicia, shaped to look exactly like one. Right in the heart of this plant sits sweet, fragrant honey. Just slip a tube in and slurp it up, and those wing-like petals, yeah, you can munch them too. Sora's jaw dropped. This wasn't some cute butterfly illusion at all. They were real living plants, and somehow they even had honey. The guy was dying to taste that honey, and Sora burst out, calling the girls over like, come on, let's share. Sora jabbed at the object and snapped that it wasn't an insect at all, it was a plant. And he'd read about it already. Then he added, and yeah, there's honey in it. The guy turned to Rurika and Chris and asked if they wanted to taste it. Chris wrestled with what she truly wanted then. Out of nowhere, heat rushed to her cheeks and she dropped her gaze. Rurika caught it and grilled Chris, saying she didn't even like sweets yet. The truth is, she's totally obsessed with him. Chris tried to blurt it out again, but the words still refused to come. So the guy started sniffing out this wildly incredible plant. Rurika and Chris pulled it off on the first try, but when Sora hesitated, he had to sprint after them. Rurika pushed back and asked Sora again so he'd admit it. You really can use this tube to suck the honey right out of it. Sora nodded and said, yeah, definitely. Then the three of them dove in and started slurping the honey right out of the plant. His eyes lit up because that flavor was rare and it tasted amazing. Sora grinned and said it was sweet, and that he could actually feel those fruity notes blooming. Rurika beamed with pure admiration, saying it was incredible, fresh as can be, so not a trace of bitterness, and Christ just added that it smells amazing. Rurika snapped his head towards Sora and asked if this plant's wing could actually be eaten. Sora just shrugged and said he figured it was. Rurika lit up and told the guys, come on, this is the perfect time to crash and recharge. And the girl grabbed the catch and decided to cook up something delicious herself. Chris mulled it over, and Sora couldn't hide her shock at the girl's plan because this would be the very first camping dinner they'd share together. Everyone was grinning as they ate dinner out in the wild, and Rurika suddenly yelled that it was time to get down to business. Sora steadied her and promised that now they'd cook up something insanely delicious. But then Rourke's face flipped in an instant. She snapped, first, we ripped the wings off this creature and I'm making a salad out of them. Sora froze when he heard that, then told the girls that even if they were just plants, it still felt like he was doing something wrong, while Rurika and Chris stayed ice calm and started tearing the plant wings off. One by one, these girls had hunted monsters for 3 whole years. After a while, the guys ripped the wings off, and boom, instant grass insect salad. Sora was the first to dive into that salad. Then he crunched the wings of grass insects and grinned at the girls, telling them it was insanely tasty. Chris and Rurika dove in too, and Sora said the crunch felt amazing, fresh, sweet, and sour all at once. Then the guy nodded and realized it tasted just like fruit. Rurika and Chris dug into the salad, and when Rurika tasted just how good it was, she begged Chris to stop because that flavor was addictive. Rurika blurted that it's better not to cook this dish at all, because a storm of ideas hit her at once, and she even suggested slapping it on bread or going full and turning it into a main course. Then Rika's eyes blew wide with terror, and she blurted, oh my god. Right in front of the guys, a cow popped out and just started grazing the grass like it owned the place. Calm, unbothered, Sora slapped on his assessment skill and the info instantly flashed. It was a black cow, just a run-of-the-mill, wild cow species. Rurik's fighter side flared up instantly, and she snapped at Chris to get straight to it. Chris nodded, jumped in to back her up, and said she understood. When he caught the girl acting like that toward the cow, he went right on edge and stared at them like, what are you planning? Sora couldn't wrap his head around the cruelty these girls were showing, yet they were already charging toward the cow. Chris finally tapped into her magic, and Rurika sprinted upstairs in a panic. A few seconds later, Sora saw the cow peacefully sprawled on the grass, sound asleep while Chris softly brushed its hair like everything was perfectly fine. Right then, Rurika raised a little bowl and started milking the cow to grab fresh milk. Sora's hope crashed fast. He instantly clocked it. The girls weren't trying to wreck the cow at all. They just wanted milk. He strode up to the girls and told them, straight face, that he figured they'd finally decided to kill her. Then Rurika and Chris burst out laughing at the guy. Rurika told the guy straight up that even killing isn't automatically the worst thing. She insisted the girls wouldn't murder unless it was truly necessary, and Chris backed her up. Rurika blurted that all they needed was milk, and she still couldn't wrap her head around why they had to kill the cow until Sora listened to the girls and snapped, I get it now. The guys hunted for food again, and after that cow, they stumbled on some bird eggs. Sora inspected them and realized they weren't normal at all. because the eggs had that see-through shell. The guys decided to whip up another dish, so they cracked in the milk and eggs, then poured in the sweet nectar from a grass insect. Then the guys plunged the bread into that mixture and let it soak until the flavor fully hit. While the bread drank in the mixture, Rurika grabbed the mower and cut the grass. Then right after, they dug a hole right there. In this tiny hole, the guys crammed in a bonfire, and Sora brought the flames right to their spot. After that, Sora fired up the same frying pan his uncle gave him, tossed in some barbecue oil, and used it for a camping trip. Sora leaned in and spread the infused bread into the scorching oil, slow and careful, like every move mattered. After a bit, they finally struck gold with a mouth-watering plate. Renchi toast stacked with fresh leaves and dripping in syrup made from grasshoppers. Sora sniffed his toast, grinned, and said it smelled amazing, and the guy instantly realized the other world was wild, so cool, packed with all these fresh, brand new things. Roshaka told Sora they just whipped up something that looked like biscuits, and the girls had done it fast. Honey, milk, and flour only. Sora lit up at their cleverness and told them, "You're awesome. Seriously." The guys dropped into their cleared spot and prayed, hands clasped tight. Then they all exchanged wishes for a damn fine meal. At the height of the day, that endless blue sky just keeps stretching on and on, making everything feel wide open and limitless. The meadow ripples under a soft breeze, and not far from the guys, there's a cute little cow that keeps changing its mood. They were soaking in all that beauty, laughing as they dug into the dishes they'd cooked, and one of the guys shrugged and said, "Honestly, this is perfect." Sora took one bite, then lit up and declared the sweet and sour greens with that honey were ridiculously good. He was absolutely hooked. Ruka nodded along and told him straight up there was no way she could have ever imagined they'd score food this insanely good on some normal camping trip. While the girls were debating how the dish tasted, Rurika grinned and said that butter with honey was a total thrill. Then Sora suddenly spotted CL popping up right behind her. The guy blinked in shock and swore it was the very same animal he'd seen before. He slipped his hand behind his back, barely noticeable to the girls, and stretched it out towards CL. Right as the guy handed it over, the animal snatched it up and ate it on the spot. Then Sora stared at CL and thought, "You're seriously adorable." Chris suddenly spotted that guy and the monster standing right beside him. Sora hyped the milk, biscuits, and nut tea as insanely tasty, and the girls immediately nodded along, fully agreeing. At that moment, Chris realized she wanted to talk just as freely as Sora and Rurika, but the truth hit hard. This girl was super shy, even while they were in the same squad. Rika stared at Chris and caught that deep, thoughtful look on her face. Rurika clocked the problem on the spot, and in a rush of awkwardness, she realized she was just painfully shy. Rurika told Sora, "I wish I had a magic bag that could keep these dishes warm for a bit." And Sora shot back, "Do we actually have something like that?" Rurika confessed that she'd once watched herself get auctioned off, then explained how that magic bag works, locking food into freshness while it stays warm for a while. Still, the truth hit hard. The bag's price was so brutal it nearly broke her. Rurek rushed back to Chris and blurted that she'd heard rumors of spatial magic like that. Then she leaned in and demanded to know what the girl had tucked inside that bag. Rureka shot Chris a sly wink and told him, basically, "Yup, this is my specialty." Chris's nerves sparked, and he awkwardly whipped his head toward Rurika. Chris clung to her last shred of control, forcing herself to get it together. Then, out of nowhere, she blurted that it wasn't spatial magic at all. Sora's eyes widened as he clocked that Chris was just too shy, but he knew she'd still push through and finish. Pris's words caught in her throat. She started stuttering, and suddenly she couldn't get out a full sentence. Sora and Rurika stared at the girl, holding their breath as they waited for her answer. Chris's cheeks flared red, and she snapped her gaze downward. Chris shot an apology to the guys, admitting he couldn't finish. Sora stepped in for the girl, and when he said it was all good, he just shrugged like, he messes up constantly. Rurika then jumped in too, trying to set the girl up and make her say it all again. Chris hesitated, then told the guys this spatial magic is all about control over space. Then comes the offshoot. This is the real magic of storage. Say the word storage, and boom, a steak slips right into the inventory. Storage magic basically freezes time itself to keep every bite fresh and waiting. Sora got the idea, but Rurika was just thrilled, praising the girl like, "You did it." Chris kept going, saying that spatial magic has few users and that if someone owns it, they'll get invited to an elite squad, even if they're not built for combat. Chris couldn't figure out why she was so shaken then. At the very last words, the whole room seemed to dim, and she slipped them out in a half whisper. Ruriko lit up for her and praised her again. Sora grinned at Chris and said it was good enough, then admitted he'd love to get his own hands on magic like that. Chris smiled right back. Sora's mind started spinning on spatial magic, and then he realized the last time he checked the parameters, this power wasn't even on his list. He had the full toolbox grade blocking, night vision, cooking skills, disassembling, painting, and that sharp parallel thinking mind. Sora started to wonder if he looked at it that way. He still had skill points, but then the big question hit him. Where the heck was the actual skill hiding? Sora whipped around to Chris and said, "When I learned about simple magic, I could just use it, so if that's how it worked for me, does it work the same way for everyone? Chris paused, thinking hard. Chris stumbled out an awkward answer, yeah. Someday he'd figure out how to use it. Sora shot back to Chris. Yeah, you've got it right. No matter which magic he picks, it all comes down to luck. Chris nodded. Yep, that's it. Chris told her she'd heard some crazy rare skills can only be learned by reading books written in special characters, and if you don't know those characters, forget it. You can't realistically learn a thing. Sora told the girl that it finally all made sense, and then he turned to Chris and thanked him for spilling the answers. Sora was grinning from ear to ear, but Chris was braced to explode tense, jittery, and fired up. Sora started sweating like crazy, scrambling for what else he could say to Chris, because that whole conversation felt painfully awkward. He knew the group needed him to flip the mood fast. Suddenly, Sora blurted it out and asked the girls how to stop the mushroom incest. And before anyone could blink, he snapped that the real issue wasn't to argue with his mother, completely blindsiding the girls, who never expected that kind of answer from a guy. They stared at the guy, confused and painfully awkward, but no one said a word, and Sora turned to the girls like, wait, are you seriously telling me you understood nothing at all? Meanwhile, the guys had been trudging along for ages, stopping for breaks like clockwork, yet because of his crazy skill, he never once gets tired. The guy stared ahead and wondered, just how far have we already gone? Suddenly, a shadowy black shape lunged out of nowhere behind Sora, slamming him to the ground. Sora sensed it in an instant, snapped around, and spun back hard, praying he'd catch sight of what had just drawn his attention. But there was no one behind him, just this guy staring out into the distance like he was hunting answers no one else could see. That hit him like a jolt. His body went stiff, and he swore he could feel someone's gaze locked on him. Rurika clocked the guy's worry and snapped. What's wrong? What are you staring at? Sora shot a nervous smile and blurted, nothing, it's just nonsense. But ever since Sora unlocked his detection skill, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been zeroing in on him right there in the royal capital, and even after they set up camp, the watching didn't stop. This crushed Sora so hard he couldn't even wrap his head around it. Who in the world would need him? He guessed it had to be the castle people, but the moment he thought about it, everything screamed, no, they'd already grabbed him, kicked him out, and still wanted to follow him. A window popped up right in front of Sora, asking if he wanted to burn points to learn a new skill blocking assessment. No less, Sora paused, weighing it hard, and then the idea hit. This was his moment to go for it. Sora shot back that, yeah, he wanted to spend his points, and right in front of him, a window popped up, revealing a fresh skill that blocked the first level's assessment. The guys kept hiking, and the evening sky started creeping closer with every step. Berika leaned in and told the guys, the sun's about to drop fast. Then she pointed at a nearby tree and asked, so want to set up camp there? Sora lit up at Rururaka's idea, agreeing instantly because in his mind, this was finally going to be his first camp, and the excitement was practically bursting out of him. Rurika told the guys to cook dinner first, then the girls flipped the plan, and she shot it down with a firm no. The girl decided to trade notes about her skills first, so Rurika could believe they'd stay sharp and move like pros when an emergency hits. Rurika told the guys, let me go first. Her skills building up her body and zeroing in on danger. Then I decided to tell Chris, and she blinked in confusion before admitting she could use fire and wind magic, plus she even remembered one more trick, simple magic. Ruika spun to Sora and grilled the guy about his skills, and she made it crystal clear he didn't have to spill anything he didn't want to share, because he and Chris both had skills they kept locked up tight. Sora figured that after saying it, there was no way he'd know everything about her, yet somehow he did, and honestly, it felt downright creepy. Sora figured he'd picked up a few skills, but they were still way too weak, and now he wasn't sure he could actually pull them off in a real fight. For a while, Sora couldn't stop wondering what he'd say to the girls. Sora told the girls his magic was all about simple carry skills, and Rurika shot back, yeah, that's exactly what I think, because those skills are genuinely legit. After a while, the dude finally jumped into the kitchen and started cooking up dinner. Rurika started chopping the food and told the guys, for the road, you'll eat plain bread and soup plus dried meat. Then Sora shot a question at her. What did it mean that they were eating stuff that wouldn't rot and still weighed almost nothing? Rurika shot back, yeah, it is. Then immediately admitted their afternoon snack was the one exception. After a little while, everything was finally set, and the guys prayed again, thanking the spirits for the meal. Rurika snapped that this dish tastes the exact same every time, zero variety. Sora nodded right along, and the guy muttered, that's why spatial magic users are pure gold. Meanwhile, Nightfell and the built-to-fire guy are back at it so they don't end up freezing. Rurika snapped that the sun was already gone, and the girl chimed in like, alright, time to hit the bed. At night, somebody's gotta stay on edge. No excuses, Rurika turned to Asura and asked if he could handle it, because this was his first time and they'd have to keep watch side by side. Sora shot back with total confidence he could handle it solo. The other guy even bragged that, because of his solid walking skills, he barely got tired all day, and that his detection ability would be a game changer for them once night hit. Sora told the girls he'd be the first on fire guard, taking the post while everyone else slept because he swore he wouldn't close his eyes, not with that rush of excitement burning through him. The girls thanked him, and Rurika said, "Then you've got this, just leave it to you." Chris shot him an apology, then told him it was best they hauled out now. The girls shot him a wave and called out, "Good night." Sora waved back at them, and then they slipped behind a tree and curled up there to settle in. Chris had already dozed off to the cozy crackle of the fire, and Sora stayed planted by the flames, still awake. Right then, he heard Rurika calling his name, and he snapped his head toward her, confused because she still hadn't gone to sleep. Rutika practically bounced up to the guy and asked if he had a minute, and the second Sora clocked it was a night secret, his gut flipped with a weird, uneasy feeling. I shot back, "Yeah, go ahead, talk." Rurika dropped down beside a guy by the campfire, praising him for a job well done, especially for day one, and when Sora jumped in to back her up, the guy turned to Rurika and told her she was crushing it too. Ruriko flashed him a wink and confessed that she was a little worried about him and everything, but in the end, she still insisted those worries were totally unnecessary. Rurika said the truth was simple, he'd spent his whole life dreaming of seeing the world. Sora stumbled over his words and thanked the girl for her support, trying hard to sound brave. Sora leaned in and told Rurika, "It's all thanks to you. Your experience is way beyond mine." And Rurika burst out laughing before thanking Sora right back. Sora told the girl that, if he wasn't wrong, they'd been on this road for a couple of years already. Then he turned to Rurika and asked if she had any stories to share. The girl's mind raced with one question: what would Sora actually want? The girl nodded and said she could finally tell them everything about the Imperial Arena. So yeah, we're not surprised he'd absolutely want to hear her story. Roshia told me she'd been invited there once, but the moment she stepped in, she hated it like it was nothing more than some stage show built for an audience. Sora nodded at the girl and told her that he got it. But even he couldn't pretend this wasn't an awful, soul-cringing experience for anyone. Rurika burst into laughter and told Sora, "Trust me, I've racked up a whole collection of incredible moments in my story." The girl pointed to the smiles her customers around the world, and Rurika told the guy exactly what hit her in that moment, how thrilled she was that she'd become a traveler. Sora was completely stunned by what that girl said, and again, he shot back to Rurika that he finally understood her right there in that tube. The moment he clocked out of delivery, he couldn't stop remembering the bright, happy faces of his customers, and Sora chimed in, saying he'd hit the road as a traveler someday too. And Sora and Rurika erupted into laughter about it. He sat by the campfire in dead silence for a while, then Rurika turned back to him. The girl told Sora she was thrilled he'd finally spoken to Chris, and Rurika couldn't hide it. It was the first time she'd ever seen Chris talk to someone who wasn't her. Rurika lit up with joy. She told Chris she was genuinely happy for him. Then she practically burst with relief that Sora had finally become her friend, and she made sure he knew how grateful she was. But Sora told the girl, "No, listen, I should have thanked him, because only that guy actually knows how to make camping fun." Rurika flat out admitted that Sora is an absolute gem of a guy, but then her smile vanished. Her eyes went cold and she warned the guy, "If you lay a hand on Chris, I'll kill you." Then she leaned in and demanded, ominously, "Got it." Sora stiffened on the spot, staring at the girl with pure terror blazing in his eyes. Sora told Rurika, "Yes, I'd never, ever hurt you." She dusted herself off, nodded like that was all she needed, and said she was good because that was the only thing she came to tell him. Rurika strutted toward their sleeping spot and told Sora good night with a warm smile. Sora nodded, then sent the girl off with a warm wish for sweet dreams. Meanwhile, the whole street went dead silent. Just the soft crackle of a campfire hissed through the neighborhood like a warning. Sora curled up by the fire and stared into the flames like they were hiding a secret. He remembered Rurika's warning messing with Chris even a little, and she'd end him, and the guy let out a nervous laugh, like his heart was tripping over itself. Sora believed these were his very first real friends in the whole world, so he vowed to protect them with everything. He had no drama, no danger, not a single problem. Sora thought that in Japan, he'd basically have no chances with girls because every time they were around, he'd get way too scared to even know what to do. Out of nowhere, CL popped up right in front of Sora so fast and so shocking that Sora jumped back. The poor guy went rigid, and then he screamed. Seal tumbled forward, head over heels, skidding straight toward the blazing fire. When the seal rolled up to the flames, it stared them down like it was terrified, and then it let out a panicked scream. Seal bolted away from the fire in the blink of an eye. This terrified Sora. "Any asshole, please tell me he's okay." CL started lurching forward, snapping with rage at the guy, and Sora let out a quiet chuckle, telling him he was just relieved he was okay. Suddenly, CL shot back up in a burst of energy and raced into the sky, grinning ear to ear. Sora trailed the animal, firing question after question at CL, demanding to know why it kept streaking off from him again. CL lifted the guy's face and showed him the sky above. Stars exploded everywhere, and for a second, everything felt gorgeous and unreal. Sora couldn't stop staring, whispering that it felt straight out of a fairy tale because he'd never, ever seen anything like it in his entire life. But right then, Sora's thoughts snapped back into motion. He was thinking, yeah, this is my first time working with someone. But the second he couldn't figure out what to do, panic started creeping in. Then he slammed the brakes on his thoughts and barked, "Stop!" Sora asked if it was his first time, and he just nodded because he'd already survived countless trials, suffered through hard times, and tasted real joy in this world. Sora knew he had to get to know them on his own terms, and he went into it with pure, honest sincerity. Sora knew he had to dig deeper and really get to know his new friends. And just like that, a brand new day bursts in while a sunrise burns over another world. Sora zonked out early morning, and not even the bright sunbeams could pry him awake. Out of nowhere, dark shadows crawl across the guy's face. He snapped to the truth. Someone had literally stolen the sun for him, and there, looming right over his head, stood the person blocking it. So he flung his eyes open to see who'd come to save or stop him. Sora clocked Rurika and Chris, and when the girls flashed those sweet smiles and said good morning, it hit him. These were the first good morning wishes he'd ever received in this world. Ruka noticed Sora had finally woken up and slipped away from him, and the girl told him it was time to start baking bread. Chris stayed glued to Sora's side, fumbling with nerves as he tried to get his message out, while the girls blurted out hesitantly and finally asked if he wanted her to help him wash. Sora's eyes lit up like, "Yeah, I could use a wash, so let's do it." Out of nowhere, Chris snapped her staff straight at the guy's face and blasted him with a non-stop stream of water. Then she yelled that this was her cleaning skill. Sora flashed a smile, stunned that it was so unexpected, but man, it felt refreshing. He shot awake right after that shower, all thanks to the wash. The guy immediately thanked Chris for helping her out. Chris instantly turned beet red from it all. Then she bolted over to help Rurika whip up some bread. And that's how their awesome morning kicked off right there, with real friends by their sides. Sora thanked the girls for breakfast. Then the guys dug in, ate up, and packed every last thing. And just like that, they tore off again, grinning like they'd hit the jackpot. Sora remembered he's been walking nonstop, so his indicators should be climbing nonstop too. He barked the command to open his status, and a glowing status panel snapped into view right in front of him. Sora figured he'd hit a whole new level, but even he could tell that every time the guy pushed higher, it only got tougher to keep raising the bar. Yet, he still couldn't help feeling grateful. Meanwhile, Sora keeps leveling up his life skills fast, learning archery, night vision, painting, cooking, spatial magic, disassembly, and even parallel thinking. Sora blurted that he had just unlocked spatial magic too, and the moment the words hit, the guy's eyes widened because this was the exact power Chris had been talking about back then. He swore it was magic, like a power that lets you save food before it turns to trash, and Sora was dead certain he had to learn that skill, no matter what. Sora glanced back at his status bar and realized that since grade blocking was going to be a pain to improve the usual way, the guy burned 2 skill points to slam himself up to the second level. Sora didn't even hesitate. He knew he had to learn a brand new skill, so he started by testing it right on his backpack. He stared at it, then decided to fire up some spatial magic to make it work. Then bam, a window popped up straight in front of him, and Sora stared back at him with a sharp, confused look. Right on the window, it warned him that his level wasn't high enough for a spatial magic skill to handle something that size, so Sora had to crank his level up and try again. Sora couldn't shake the fear that his item was way too big, so he decided the very first move was cranking up his spatial magic level. Sora clung to the rest of his rations like they were gold, and deep down, he figured that stinginess might be exactly what gets him that level up. Sora decided to try spatial magic one more time, then the food vanished from his hands, and it got tossed straight into the storage inventory instantly. Sora realized he had to tap into parallel thinking and step up his recovery too. Rurika suddenly noticed the guy looked completely lost, and the girl spun towards Sora, asking if he was okay and if he wasn't falling behind them, so Sora yanked his eyes off the status bar and immediately apologized. Meanwhile, this guy's leveling up hard, he's mastering spatial magic, thinking in parallel, and bouncing back faster than ever. But even as Sora's skills kept exploding upward, he chose to lock it all up tight and keep it from the girls for now. He figured he'd hold the truth until he finally hit the right moment at the right level. And just like that, the guy kept rolling forward, calm on the surface like nothing could rattle him. Every so often, Sora and the girls pulled over, grabbed a snack, and powered up. Then 2 whole days vanished as they kept racing toward their goal. At some point, the guys pushed into the forest, but Rurika followed the map like it was glowing. Sora's jaw dropped when he realized the village was right in the middle of all that wild, tangled jungle. Rushika leaned in and told the guys that before they even set off for camping, she'd checked out where they were headed, and yep, the map screamed one thing. The locals are top-tier lumberjacks, so they'd reach the place in no time. Meanwhile, the guys barreled up to the busted fence and everyone's nerves snapped tight. Once the guys finally looked ahead, they saw a handful of tiny houses, a couple of animals roaming around, a fence wrecked to pieces, and an inscription that bluntly announced, This is a village of rhinos. Sora tensely told Rurika and Chris that this was how it had to go, and Rurika snapped back that she was sure the goblins had set the village up like this. Suddenly, a little boy peeked out from behind the bushes right in front of the guys. The moment the boy looked up, you could tell he was freaking out, so the guy went, "You're adventurers," and the others shot back, "Yeah, we are," and the boy wasted no time, begging them to follow him straight into the house. As the boy sprinted through the streets, he shouted to the elder that adventurers had finally arrived in their village. Sora, Rurika, and Chris traded shaky, uncertain looks like they were bracing for impact. Even with pure nerves clawing at their chests, they still trailed that boy right to a tiny little house. When the guys slipped inside, the house door swung shut behind them, but through the windows, everyone still kept an eye on every word they exchanged with the elder. And they jumped on the chance without wasting a second. Sora and the girl slipped into the house, dropped down on a little carpet right in the middle of the room, and from the look on their faces, everyone was bursting with excitement and fighting off pure nerves. Suddenly, the elder snapped his head toward the guys and demanded their forgiveness. The man's face screamed panic as he realized just how dangerous their situation had become. Sora and the girl stood ready, eager to hear what that man needed and to jump in and help him however they could. The elder lit up and thanked the adventurers for rushing in to help, then admitted their whole village was getting torn apart by brutal goblins, so everyone was hanging by a thread with no clue what to do next. Ruraka pressed the man again, and that's when you could feel it. Everything was on the brink. The girl snapped that the order only targeted 5 pathetic goblins. The man nodded, saying, "Yeah, at first it was just that. Back when we sent the order to the guild, he swore that right from the start there were only about 3 of them. Then somehow, every single day, the numbers kept exploding." Rudraka looked the man in the eye and said she understood something. This horrific had truly exploded in their village. But she snapped back, if he already knew goblins would keep multiplying every single day, why on earth didn't he fix the guild's order for a whole month? That's when the guys finally figured it out. This is exactly why the reward for the order got bumped up. The man leaned in and demanded to know how many more apologies he owed the girl because pure shame was burning through him. Rureka cornered the elder and demanded to know how many goblins would still be left at the end because that cruel thing wouldn't let them live like normal. He dropped his head and answered, voice heavy with sorrow, there were 10 of them. Rureka screamed in sheer terror and demanded again, 10 of them. 10 of them. Suddenly, the man snapped his answer in half and swore it wasn't 10 goblins at all. It was 20. Rureka swallowed hard and grilled the elder again about the monster count, and she couldn't even wrap her head around how many there were. Then the guy flipped his answer again, apologized to the others, admitted he'd been lying, and right at the end, only 30 goblins were left. The guys were seconds away from losing it, begging themselves to believe this was just some sick joke, because with goblins swarming their village, they had no idea whether anything at all would go smoothly in the end. Meanwhile, night crumpled in the village while the girls finally slipped into bed and woke up recharged with strength. Sora was awake again, locked in on the chaos in the village, and all night he'd been replaying what would happen when they finally clashed with those goblins. Sora couldn't shake these thoughts from his head all night long. Yesterday, during their talk, Ruerka grilled the village headman, asking how often goblins hit their home, and the man answered, about once every few days. The elder even swore they were there last night, so he's sure the goblins will come back in just 3 or 4 days. Russia told the man that everything was finally crystal clear, then today they chose to rest, and tomorrow they'd march straight to their lair. Sora was terrified he might actually end up killing a real living being by accident, when in truth, he couldn't let himself do that, not even if the villagers were asking him to. Sora started to shake, and he couldn't stop wondering if he'd really make it to the end because this mission was no joke. Suddenly, Sora noticed someone closing in on their house. He spun around, and there was the little boy, the same one they'd met the moment they rolled up to the village. He looked to the Mr. Adventurer. He thanked Sora for rushing in and saving them from the mess they'd been stuck in, and Sora totally got how he felt and what they'd been through. Sora spun around and scanned his surroundings, then spotted the boys' ripped trousers like they'd just survived another brutal attack. And there it was, a busted fence, basically ruins now, all around the village. You could spot random clutter like scattered flowers and left behind garden tools. Sora didn't say a word, she just stared at him in stunned silence, and he fought to hold back the tears burning in his eyes. The boy burst out to Sora that those goblins had swept every last chicken from their village and even snatched his most beloved one, Lucky. Sora couldn't stop thinking about that book he'd read, how goblins take delight in other people's pain, and it sickened him to his core. Suddenly, Sora leaned in and studied the boy's body even closer, then spotted something that made everything click. Sora yanked himself up from his seat, then pointed at the boy's arm and snapped, "You've got a wound right here." Sora snatched the guy's hand, stared close, and found brutal, deep claw wounds carved into his skin. The boy shot back to Sora, saying plenty of people are hurting way worse than a few scratches, so yeah, he's totally fine, and those wounds don't seem to bother him one bit. Still, Sora's heart sank for the boy, so he stepped in, reached into one pocket, and pulled out a bottle of potion. Sora grabbed some of the potion and spilled it straight onto the boy's wound, and the kid stared at it in shock. Right in front of him, the wounds started vanishing like they were never there, and his hand turned smooth and spotless, leaving the boy staring in shock at what Sora had done. Sora grabbed the potion bottle and shoved it into the boy's hands, then barked, "Go give this to the other villagers right now." Sora's guy got all flustered and told Sora straight up that these potions cost a fortune. They can't afford them. Sora leaned in and told the boy to grab the bottle and help the rest of the villagers. Just one rule, don't let the girls find out their secret or they'll blow up in anger. The boy nodded, listened close, and thanked the guy for saving the day. The boy spun back to Mr. Adventurer and confessed, "I don't know how to fight, but I'll pray with everything I've got I'll make sure we win." Sora kept trembling, but to keep everyone from panicking, he clenched his fist tight and held it together. So the kid nodded back, telling him, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." Then morning crashed in, and the whole village burst awake. The villagers decided to drag Sora and the girls on a hike toward the goblins, and the elder leaned in and told the boys, "Every soul in this village is going to pray for your safety in that battle." The guys looked locked in, ready to throw down because this battle was going to be brutally hard for them. Sora and the girls grabbed their bags and hit the road, ready for whatever came next. Rureka told the guys that goblins were lurking far to the southwest, so they had to head that way. Only trouble was, they were already right on top of it. Rureka whipped around to Sora and apologized for how awful the first hunt had turned out for him. But Sora just shrugged and said, "No, really, it's fine." Sora told the girls, "This village is drowning in suffering, so we're going all out to wipe these goblins out and free everyone." Chris suddenly snapped her head toward Sora and swore she'd back him with everything she had. Then Ririka stepped in beside her, giving a solid nod of support. But Sora was braced to snap. He swallowed hard, fighting off pure nerves. He grinned and thought, "Yeah, this is gonna work. They'll do it for sure." The guys huddled up again and ran through the exact battle plan they'd already built. Right from the start, the guys agreed Chris would unleash magic on the goblins, smashing their plans and throwing them into pure confusion. Her magic hits the monsters so hard they can barely breathe, and for a while, they won't recover. The guys figured the goblins would finally crack, panic, and bolt scrambling out of their lair, darting every which way like scared blind kittens. And right then, it's Rurika's turn. She barrels into the fight and starts cutting down these creatures like they're nothing. That girl has a huge edge, 2 blades in her hands, and years of experience fueling her strikes, so she can wipe out a whole lot of goblins fast. Next, Sora and Chris are stepping in to smash through the goblins' main force. Then Sora zeroes in on the handful of goblins that slip past them. Some monsters are about to panic hard, totally clueless on where to run, and that's when the guys get the perfect advantage. And that's when Sora spotted a goblin he'd have to hunt down and destroy. He stared at one of the goblins and, like something straight out of the books he'd studied, he remembered how goblins were always painted as ferocious monsters that tear through everything in their way. But the second a guy stares them down face to face, everything flips. Sora's eyes screamed panic because he was terrified of killing them. Sora couldn't wrap his head around it. He was about to end a living being's life with his own hands, right here and right now. He's set on killing him outright, and that's something this guy just couldn't tolerate. Right then, Rurika snapped her focus onto Sora and told him she could read exactly what he was thinking in that very moment. But the girl finally snapped and asked the guy straight up what would happen to the village and everyone in it if they left them alive right now. Because when goblins come, they wipe out everything. Food, jobs, even your home, until people are left with nothing. Rurika, mid-slay, was already cutting through the goblins, and she told the man that in moments like this, it wasn't up to them to decide what was fair and what wasn't. But honestly, Rurika refused to let the others start suffering all over again, and when push came to shove, they didn't even help. His eyes shot wide open, and his thoughts crashed forward, unstoppable. Sora couldn't forget the boy from the village. Terror burned in his eyes, and his tears were pleading for the whole place to save him. Right in that moment, an evil goblin's face popped up in front of Sora, and Sora launched straight into the attack. Sora finally understood there was no escape now, so he had to do it. Sora stiffened, clenched his teeth, and braced himself for the hit. Right as the goblin closed in, Sora whipped his sword up and drove it straight into the goblin's stomach. He made one bold move that instantly crushed every doubt he had. Sora got hooked on it, and suddenly goblins didn't haunt his conscience at all then. Before he even knew it, his very first fight with them was already finished. Monster bodies littered the ground, all of them shredded by the guy's swords. Rureka snapped her head to Sora and said, "That's the final goblin." So they tore through the last one and wiped them all out. Then she praised him for nailing the assignment. Suddenly, their smiles vanished. Pure fear snapped into their eyes. Rurika pointed at the blood dripping from his head and told him straight up, "He's hurt bad." Sora's panic hit like a wave, and he demanded the girl make it plain was she telling the truth. The guy insisted he was fine, saying he felt great, just an ordinary scratch. Sora snapped his head up and spotted Chris right in front of him, clutching a potion bottle in her hands, and the moment she showed it off, she insisted it was insanely expensive, but Sora shrugged it off, saying he didn't need it since his wound would heal on its own soon. Even so, Chris grabbed the guy's hand. Sora's jaw dropped in shock, but he didn't stop her. The guy dropped to his knees, clearing the way so Chris could treat Sora's wound without a second to waste. Chris pressed a little napkin onto Sora's forehead, then started tying it down tight with a ribbon. Throughout it all, Sora never pushed back once he didn't say a word to the girl. Only after Chris finally sealed the guy's wound did Sora spin around, face bright, and thank the girl. Chris stayed wound up, and she still wouldn't answer Rurika's relieved, though, because Chris finally took charge and stepped in to help Sora. Once their job was done, the guys scooped up every last goblin corpse and blasted them with a massive bonfire. They struck it to keep the goblins from rotting into undead horrors and to stop the blood stink from luring in something far more vicious than them. Sora, Rurika, and Chris stood shoulder to shoulder by the fire, eyes shut tight, honoring the dead with a ritual that said, "We remember." After a while, the guys came back to the village safe and sound, and they dashed straight to the elder's house. Rurika thrust a bag into the man's hands and declared that every one of the 34 goblins was gone cleanly, safely, all destroyed. He shook with helpless impotence, but the second he breathed out, pure relief poured out of him. The elder leaned in and told the kids he was filled with nothing but gratitude because their relentless fight against the goblins saved their village from a whole pile of trouble. Rurika told the men they were okay for once because it was only goblins, but the girl still snapped that he better not lie about the orders he sends to the guild ever again. The elder finally swore he'd be way more careful from here on out. A grin split the man's face, and he told the guys, "We've cooked up a feast just for you, so stay here and soak up all the hospitality." As night rolled in, the guys showed up at a feast thrown to celebrate their crushing victory over the goblins. Wreaths of flowers were laid at the children's feet, and the moment they saw the feast, their eyes popped wide with pure shock. A colossal feast table got planted right in the middle of the village, stacked high with food, and as the townsfolk cheered because monsters would finally stop ruining their lives, they erupted into celebration. A girl with a baby strapped to her back and a man strode up to the group, both dropping into a deep bow, and the girl burst out that those goblins once nearly snatched their boy away. Then the man clasped his thanks, genuinely thanking them from the bottom of his heart. Then two girls sprinted up to them and spilled the news the goblins had swiped half their pigs, but it was over now, and they were safe, and the girls looked the guys dead in the eye, overflowing with gratitude. 3 more people stormed up to them and told the adventurers, "We want to thank you too for saving us." Eventually, every last villager swarmed the guys, shouted their thanks, and lifted mugs of drinks to toast them. Celebration broke out like fireworks. But Sora, Rurika, and Chris stood there, stunned, staring at the residents like they'd just heard the impossible and none of them could find a single word to say next. Suddenly, someone yanked Sora's hand and snapped everyone's attention straight to them. It was the very same kid who had once called that guy Mr. Adventurer. A huge grin burst across his face and he thanked Sora for pulling him out of danger. The boy thanked them for watching the goblins, and just like that, everyone could finally play with their friends safe and sound again. Then the boy stared at Sora's face and spotted a gauze bandage hiding beneath a wreath of flowers, so he blurted out right away, asking if he'd been hurt. Sora shook his head and said, "Nope, I'm fine. Nothing terrible happened." His friends had already bandaged him up, then rewound the wound like it never even happened. The boy let out a shaky breath of relief and told him, "I'm good. Everything's fine right now," like he was begging him not to worry. But the boys hit a whole new level of confidence, and he leaned into Sora and promised that when he grows up and gets strong, he's going to be an adventurer too, just like all of them. He vowed to Sora that he'd get ridiculously strong and stand between the village and every monster attack coming their way. Sora gave it the tiniest touch. He slid closer to the boy, then softly stroked his head like he was steadying him with every gentle, encouraging touch. Sora propped the boy up and told him with total confidence that the man was dead sure he'd make it and that the same destiny would hit him even in the future. He lifted himself up and swore to the guy he'd get even stronger than he was now, just so he could keep pace with him. The boy's whole face lit up hearing the adventurer say that, and he rushed to thank Sora. Suddenly, the boy heard his friends call his name. Then they swarmed around him in a tight little group and demanded, "So what are you doing here?" The guys pulled him in like, "Come on, play adventurers with us." And the boy shot back instantly, "Yeah, I'm coming right now." The boy lowered his head before the litter in a mix of gratitude and respect, then shot over to the guys and dove straight into play. Sora waved at the boy, convinced he'd finished the creature for good with his own hands today, and still, a heavy worry wouldn't let go. Even though Sora knew they'd already piled onto the villagers' misery with pure evil, he still couldn't make himself do it. He hesitated for ages before finally deciding to take down the first goblin. Only because he and the girls snapped their focus into place right away, they managed to guard the sweet smiles of these joyful kids and their proud parents. Then it hit me that this was the day he'd never be able to forget, and he'd carry that memory with him for a long, long time. Sora and the girl dropped into their seats, and right when they did, Ruraka burst out, "Wait, what is it?" The girl took one bite, and her face lit up so delicious, Rurika admitted she'd never tasted anything like it before. Rurika spun to Sora and demanded, "Come on, try this dish right now." The girl shoved a plate into the guy's hands, and that dish sat there so perfectly arranged, it looked unreal. Sora grabbed it and instantly figured it out. It looked like bacon. He took a bite, tasted pure perfection, and blurted out that it was absolutely delicious. Sora felt that taste yank him straight back into the past, and the guy couldn't wrap his head around how he was suddenly tasting a piece of the house out here. Then Rurika burst into laughter, pointed at him, and asked what kind of reaction he was even trying to make. The girl snapped her head around, and there it was, the headman closing in on the guys, clutching a sizzling plate of meat in his hands. The man leaned in and told the guys, "This is one of our village's special treats." Then he warned them, "It goes bad way faster than dried meat, so folks rarely trade it." Rurika told the man everything was clear, but Sora couldn't shake the question. Was bacon really this rare in a place like this? The village elder and the girls were giggling and chatting sweetly, then a notice tore through the air, and CL zoomed right past them like a bolt of lightning. The guy stared him down like he'd seen a ghost, and suddenly, he was sure it was happening again. The elder let out a small laugh and told the guys he was thrilled they liked everything. He raised a plate piled with bacon and grinned, saying he had way more so they could stuff themselves as much as they wanted. Suddenly, CL shot up to the plate, sniffed it like a feast, and before anyone could stop him, he snatched every last strip of bacon in one savage bite. Everyone snapped their heads up the second they saw the bacon vanish from the plate like magic, right in front of their eyes. The guys gasped and blurted questions nonstop, asking everyone if they'd just watched that food vanish on its own. Right then, Sora, drenched in sweat, realized he was the only one who could see the seal, and somehow he had to explain what just happened. So the guy froze, stammered, and blurted out whatever he could to the stunned people. Every resident stared in disbelief at what their own eyes were seeing, and one man snapped, "Don't tell me that's a real spirit." And right then, CL himself was snatching the last crumbs off the elder's plate. The air was so tense you could cut it. Some people even couldn't find their voices anymore. While the feast was raging on, CL suddenly kicked up a commotion, and one of the residents burst into loud, confident shouting that they'd finally caught a real spirit. Some residents snapped with fury at a mystery monster, one they couldn't see, silently gobbling their food. But CL suddenly felt it. Every single person around him was glaring with pure rage, and it hit him so hard his nerves went haywire and his heart started racing. The guys rushed up to the elder and started waving their hands over the plate, hunting for anything real, only to snap back that there was nobody there at all. Right then, the guys shoved their hands through the body of a furious CL like he was nothing at all, and pure embarrassment and shame crushed him from the inside. Sora saw CL streak back up toward heaven again, and then somehow, the whole crowd erupted, cheering and shouting like joy had swallowed the world. Rurika snapped his head toward the elder, fear flickering in his eyes, and blurted, "What's happening here, and why is everyone talking like this?" The old man said that when food vanishes out of thin air, everyone calls it a fairy's trick, or even worse, an offering to the spirit. He even claimed that right in the year this happens, the forests explode with life and the livestock grow up healthy, strong, and thriving. Rurika clocked it as a good omen, and a wave of relief hit her hard. The man stayed totally calm and told the guys, "Today is pure joy, only the best news and the biggest events are happening. And you better believe it's worth paying attention." Empty plates crowded the table, and the food was nearly wiped clean. And that's when the fun finally kicks off. Every single villager spills onto the streets, dancing and cheering like the sky just smiled at them, while Rurika stays right in the spotlight, twirling at the center with the elder. Sora and Chris sat at the table while everyone else hit the dance floor, and when Sora finally laughed, he teased Chris that he'd eaten so good. But CL's question still gnawed at him, and he couldn't stop thinking about the white, fluffy thing zooming in front of his face. Was it a real fairy? A spirit, or something stranger? Sora whirled toward Chris, and the guy straight up asked if the girl knew anything about fairies and spirits, then pushed me to spill any info I had. Chris thought for a beat, then told them, "People swear fairies and spirits really live in this world." The girl swore fairies look like tiny people, and the only real difference is this wings sprout on their backs. Obviously, they can understand and speak the village's language because that's what the village head told them. 2, everyone says they're known for prank-happy chaos. And get this, they'll eat their food right in front of their faces just to mess with them. She said that, depending on the legend you believe, spirits are basically like fairies just without any one fixed form or a clear look. They can understand human speech, but only a handful can talk in a way that makes sense, so spirit magic users can reach them through the mind, and that's all she'd been able to learn. Sora's jaw dropped when Chris spilled his story. He shot back, telling her she's not just a whiz with magic, she also drops the most fascinating facts about it. And Sora summed her up in one word: incredible. But it drove Chris insane with embarrassment. When the girl turned away from Sora, her words shattered into a stutter, and she simply couldn't answer him. Right then, Sora's mind spun. What did it even mean? The odds that he was a real spirit were sky high, but it could still be something else. At least that's what he figured. Suddenly, Rurika, still stuck with the elders, shot a call out to Sora and Chris. The girl leaned in and told the boys that the village head had promised she'd share the meat with them. Then the elder let out a loud, mocking laugh. Chris and Sora were over the moon about the news, and Sora was practically vibrating with pure joy, especially over that bacon. While everyone kept dancing and downing drinks to celebrate, the village headman scooped up the children and marched them into a tiny house. The man shoved a bunch of meat bundles into their hands and bowed again, and the guys froze. Sora finally blurted, what's all this? Because seriously, could they even accept that much? The village snapped back, we're the ones who saved this place, and told him, if you need anything else, just ask the man. Sora stepped up to the headman and asked, can I tell them how you make this meat? The man said once it's done, they dry it out, then smoke it over firewood, and the village headman turned to the boys like, you want to hear more? Then the village headman stepped up and tore into them with a full-on meat lecture. The guys instantly peppered him with questions. Chris demanded to know why the taste wouldn't match if he used wood from outside the village, and Rurika said it takes a ton of work. But of course that made sense, because the meat was insanely tasty. Sora marched up to the village headman and asked if he could buy some of this tree. And when Rurika heard it, she gaped in shock, then demanded what he planned to make, because that goal is insanely hard. Sora told the girl, this meat is insane, so I've got to learn how to make it myself. The villagers told him this tree grows right around their village, so it's not worth trading for money. Then the man jabbed at the corner and said, and there's plenty of firewood piled up over there. So yeah, they can grab all the firewood they want, and that twist leaves the guys totally stunned. Sora nodded at the village headman, then slipped out of the house. Sora sat down, sized up exactly how much firewood he'd need, then made up his mind to grab it all and carry it with him. But Rumiko snapped with rage at what he did, insisting there's no way they can move it because they've got 3 days to get back. The girl then turns to Sora and asks if he understood. Sora burst into laughter, then hesitated for just a beat. Sora kicked his magic storage skill into gear, and boom, this guy's storage inventory instantly spat out a bundle of firewood with 53 pieces. The girls watched the firewood vanish like magic, and their jaws dropped in pure shock. Rurika fired off her question the second the guy finished using spatial magic. Sora let out an awkward little yeah, like he couldn't believe he just said it. The girl sprinted straight at the guy, and Sora had barely caught that Rurik was sitting on a huge secret. She admitted that even the top squads want a guy like that, and then she confessed she was so jealous of Sora it almost hurt. He nodded along with her and made it clear that this would stay sealed just between the two of them. But Rurika grilled Sora why in the world did he decide that? I mean, he could have joined a ridiculously strong squad and even gotten paid for it. Sora told the girl, yeah, I can use spatial magic, but I'm still way too weak to jump into teams like that. Sora said that if he hooked up with a strong squad, he'd end up dragging them down instead of helping. So for now, the guy chose to chase more experience, sharpening himself until he could get even stronger, and yeah, he was genuinely satisfied with that choice. Ridrika said, if you really want, we can keep you here for now, and Chris nodded right along like he was right on board. Sora told the girls he'd be thrilled, and the guy immediately thanked Rurika and Chris. Rurika pulled the guy aside again and made it crystal clear she wanted to keep this locked down and hidden from everyone. Sora shot back that if he teamed up with a new squad, they'd be forced to tear apart and go their separate ways. The guy finally admitted it. He's still dying to stay on the team with them. Chris and Rurika stared at the guy, mouths hanging open in pure shocked disbelief. Rurika suddenly whipped her hand back and slapped Sora hard, and he let out an even louder scream. The girl marched to the door and told Sora, yeah, of course you want it. And then she added, so we're teaming up together. Rurika cracked the tent open and bolted for the house's exit. Chris didn't stick around for long. She strode over to Sora and softly clasped his hand. The girl shut her eyes, nodded hard, and thanked him with every bit of her heart. Then Sora snapped his gaze to her, stunned. Rurika couldn't calm down, so she leaned in and demanded of Sora, did you ask the village headman for that meat recipe yet? Then she pressed him again like, be honest. Do you even know how to cook anything at all? Sora told them, I help my mom in the kitchen every now and then, but he admitted he couldn't handle anything fancy. Then Rurika grinned and said she was hoping some kick-ass camping kitchen would be waiting for them on the way back, and she turned to Chris like, you're with me, right? Next morning rolled in like clockwork. After the village finished their joyful feast, the crew hustled back to the royal capital. He bid farewell to every soul in the village, crossed the border one last time, and then tore off on the road home. While the guys kept walking, Sora realized they'd even gathered supplies along the way for their return, and one of the guys made it clear they were grateful for everything they'd done. The boys headed down the very same road they'd taken to reach the village, so they finally had room to breathe and mess around starting games with food. Chris and Rurika asked Sora what chocolate was, and Sora shot back by asking them what a pichinuduru was. After a while, the sky swallowed the light, and the guy threw his brakes to a stop. Rurika told Sora and Chris to pitch camp right there. Rurika flashed him a slice of a smile and asked if he'd take them out for a killer dinner tonight. Then Sora told her he'd do everything he could. Chris said she'd whip up a backup dinner if Sora screwed up, and the second she heard that, Sora stiffened like a steel spring, then snapped and demanded when Chris started getting so talkative. Rurika let out a wild laugh straight in the face of those guys. Chris was fuming, and the girl figured she had to say it out loud just to test the waters, and she also had to whip up something delicious to win Sora over. Rika grabbed the guy and shook him, shouting that she had big hopes for Sora, yet all he did was tell her not to push the bar of responsibility even higher. Sora spread out every scrap of food around him, then stared at those rugged, homey ingredients like, "Alright, what do I cook next?" Sora stared at that product and started mixing ideas like a mad scientist. Then boom, it hit him one perfect combination. Sora snatched a fruit and ripped into the peel, peeling it down fast. Sora still swore that the tubers they'd eaten in that village back then tasted just like real potatoes to him. The only twist was, this tuber looked hilarious on the outside with funny patterns, but inside, it was the real potato. No joke. Sora chopped it into pieces, then followed the recipe's instructions to microwave it, only to realize they didn't have one. So he tossed the pieces into a frying pan, poured in water with a pinch of salt, and then cooked it up hot. The guy decided to test what he could handle, but those pieces were scorching. Sora swore they tasted a bit sweeter than regular potatoes, and somehow they still managed to be ridiculously tasty. Sora shoved those thoughts aside for now and refused to deal with them yet. Next, he snatched today's Shining Star bacon. Sora cooked the bacon until it crisped up just enough to form a golden, slightly crunchy crust. He'd love to toss some mute onions into his dish, but they had none, so right then, Chris and Rurika started marching straight toward his food flavor. Chris told Sora that the bacon he was cooking smelled insanely good, and then Rurika jumped in, saying the sizzling hot oil sounded downright amazing, so much that her mouth started watering. Sora beamed at the girls and told them, "I'm almost set, just give me a second." Then Sora tossed potatoes into the pan with the bacon, dusted everything with seasonings, and fried it just long enough to get that perfect sizzle. Just a moment later, his dish was finished, and he rushed it over to the girls, and Sora practically beamed as he thanked them for waiting while his food was ready. Sora slid them his final creation, crispy fried potatoes piled high with smoky bacon. Chris and Rurika stared at the plate like it was pure magic, eyes shining with total awe. And look, there was soup waiting on the table. Chris had cooked it up, and the guys clinked smiles and wished each other a good appetite. Rurika took a bite, lit up at how soft and delicious it was, and told Sora exactly that. Then Chris stepped in, saying the girl had never tried anything like this before. So he calms down and presses the girls to admit it's the truth. And when they do, relief hits him hard. Sora tried it too, and boom, he swore it tasted sweeter than regular potatoes, especially when paired with salty bacon. Rurika pumped Sora up for an amazing job, praised how incredible his cooking was, then showed them the rents right there. The girl leaned in and asked the guy where he learned to cook that well. Sora said his mom taught him that back when she was growing up, she swore that boys should still learn how to whip up delicious food too. He told me she praised him for cooking for himself, so he started practicing now and then. Chris flashed a sweet smile and told the guy, "Man, you've got an amazing mother." Sora told Chris her soup tasted amazing too, and the moment she said it, embarrassment hit her hard. She mumbled a shy thank you. Chris figured she'd poured every last bit of strength into that bowl. Chris shot back that his food tasted better than her soup anyway, and Sora pressed the girl to explain herself because deep down, her soup had no way of losing. The guys started going at it over who had the best dish, and the argument dragged on way longer than it should have. Suddenly, Sora and Chris whipped around to Rurika and shot. So whose dish is better? The girl's nerves are on fire and she can't stop trembling. But she broke free of the mess, shot her hands up in the air, and declared that they were both winners. Chris and Sora locked eyes and shared an intense look between them. Then they burst out laughing about the whole situation like it was the funniest thing in the world. Sora couldn't stop laughing. Did he really want to keep tagging along with these girls? Sora snapped around to the girls and asked, "You two are both halfway through your journey, right?" He asked them how long they planned to stay in this country, and right then, Chris and Rarika's smiles crumpled into sadness as they stared at the ground. Rukudia said they're staying right there until they finally climb up to the C rank right now. They're still D, but once they make it, they're packing up and moving to another country. Sora shot back to the girls, telling them everything was crystal clear now. Rurika said that even with all this, they're still nowhere near strong enough, so they'll have to snag a bunch more orders before they can climb ranks, meaning they're stuck there for a while longer. Rurika shot Chris a look and said, "And yeah, we're having a blast with Sora." Those words thrown at him hit like a curveball. He blinked, totally thrown off, because he never saw this coming. Rurika told Sora that, in the end, she'd want them to work together even more. Sora lit up and instantly agreed with the girls, thrilled at the thought of them staying teamed up and working together. Sora stared up at the sky and felt their goodbye was about to hit any second, so he knew he had to level up fast, sharpen every skill, and grow into something stronger. He had to do it to keep living on his own and to finally say goodbye to the girls with a real smile. Deep down, he dreamed that the clear sky stars were quietly lighting up his future. Meanwhile, the Soros and the girls line was finally set, and the guys sprinted back to the Adventurers Guild where Mikaru caught up with them, and the girl's face lit up the moment she saw them. Sora felt Makaru's wild, joyful hello hit him like a homecoming, and honestly, this girl was sweeter than anyone could be. Rudy could turn to the girl and toss her the bag, then proudly say they were back, here were their magic stones from the job, and this was the proof the order was finished. When Rurika dropped that bag onto the table, Makaru's eyes went wide at just how huge it was. She demanded the guys explain why they'd hoarded so many magic stones, because there should have been only 5 Rurika fired back that, yep, and they'd hand in their report about it later. Mikaru told the guys she felt the same, then admitted this order had hit them hard. She stared at Sora and spotted that rewound head, asked if he was hurt, and Sora shrugged it off, saying she didn't need to worry because nothing serious had happened to him. Mikaru let out a breath of relief and told the guys, if you want, I can slap on a small patch. Sora hesitated, then snapped his eyes over to Chris, who looked absolutely wired with tension. The girl's cheeks flared red as she clattered like a boiling kettle, and Sora, completely mortified, awkwardly told Makara, I'm okay. Rureka clocked the truth. She totally saw what was going on between Sora, Chris, and giggled a little. Suddenly, she blurted out the kingdom's main headline and demanded to know, from Mikaru, how the wolf pack was doing. Mikaru leaned in and demanded the girl explain the pack of wolves that had suddenly shown up near the capital, and the best part, so many orders were already lined up and successfully sent their way. Rurika let out a shaky breath of relief and told him she was so glad nothing serious had gone wrong. The girl pressed Mikaru, asking why they weren't that strong, and Mikaru shot back, no, it wasn't like that at all. Mikaru said that, just like the guildmaster predicted, a high-level monster was leading the whole pack, and orders like that usually took forever. But right here, B and C rank adventurers teamed up on purpose, and they moved fast, real fast. But the truth is, with a monster that close to their city, danger never took a breath. Ruka's nerves were screaming, and she demanded from Mikaru again what that terrifying, high-level monster was doing there. Mikaru shot back, yeah, nothing like this has ever shown up anywhere near the capital. Things have been rough lately, and it's only getting worse. Sora nodded and fully backed Makaru on that. Meanwhile, the guys shot out of the guild one by one, each locked in their own storm of thoughts. Ririka told Sora they were finally taking a day off today and tomorrow, and Sora just shrugged it off like, cool, see you at the guild. Then the guys split ways with a quick goodbye. Sora strolled back to his hotel, then sank into a mountain of soap like it was the only thing in the world. Out of nowhere, CL slammed into view right in front of his face. Sora finally grabbed the moment and demanded answers from the furry creature, because it had come back to him after all. After a while, Sora rushed back to the hotel. He crashed onto the bed the second he could, collapsing in pure relief. But even so, his thoughts kept crashing back into his mind like a relentless drumbeat. Sora couldn't shake it. This was his very first extermination order, and he still felt like he was slicing through that goblin. Sora pressed a gentle touch to his wound, and Yango's mind instantly ripped open with flashbacks. The guy figured he would have met his end if Chris and Rurika hadn't shown up and pulled him out. Sora realized goblins might be weak one-on-one, but together they swarm with brutal numbers, so he knew he had to get stronger fast, grind harder, and sharpen his swordsmanship. He also had to keep grinding his skills to level them up, but the real key was simple. He needed to walk for miles, racking up experience and stacking skill points. Suddenly, Sora shot out of bed, blurted that he'd been walking for a whole week, and then realized he needed to rack up a ton of experience fast. Sora blurted out, demanding they open the status panel right now. Soros checked his status and grinned. He already had the 20th level and 8 fresh skill points, with the strongest skills maxed at level 6 in assessment, body strengthening, and detection, while the experience meter read 70,000 out of 130,000. Sora also clocked that his skill level had shot up, and all he had to do to keep it climbing was just walk for one more week. Sora grinned like he couldn't believe what he just pulled off. His performance made him feel on top of the world. Sora couldn't deny it. Those 2 fresh powers he unlocked from the order, parallel thinking and faster recovery, were insanely useful. He figured it out when he switched on parallel thinking. It felt like he split his own consciousness in half, flooding both hemispheres at once. While they camped out, Sora tucked the plant under his left side to doze off, then kept his detection skill cranked in his right side so he stayed locked in. So Sora can do 2 things at once, catch his breath and keep a hawk eye watch on everything unfolding around him. Still, the truth hit hard. His level wasn't high enough to juggle 2 skills at once. After draining his SP, his skills shut off for good, and the guy jolted awake, panic exploding in his chest as he demanded the girls, "Where am I and why is it so damn dark here?" Sora thought he was only a little shaken until that enhanced recovery skill kicked in and his SP shot back fast. HP, SP, and MP slowly refill on their own, but they get burned up fast, so this skill is an absolute lifesaver. Sora had nothing when they dragged him into this world, but now he's got real skills, and companions standing right beside him. So yeah, his new life is absolutely crushing it. Suddenly, something snapped the guy's attention like a hook. Sora stared at the status bar and felt his stomach drop. The XP needed to reach the next level had jumped, and after the 20th level, every single level would demand an extra 20,000 experience points. Sora instantly realized this meant leveling up would get harder and harder each time, so grabbing those skill points would take forever. He was desperate to switch up his new skills, but the moment it hit him, he shook his head and decided, yeah, for now, he'd keep the glasses on just in case. Sora let out a chuckle like, looks like I've still got a long way to go to learn everything. Sora realized he'd carelessly brushed his battle wound, and the guy just nodded like, yeah, that checks out. He slowly peeled the bandages off and grinned, saying his advanced recovery skill had already sealed that forehead cut shut. He straight up admitted he just can't get enough of his own skills. Right then, Sora snapped back to Chris how he handled that wound with the softest care and wrapped the guy's head up with a bandage. That left Sora totally puzzled. He stared at his bandage and scratched his head, thinking, why would anyone rewrap it even after it's already healed? Sora didn't want Chris to snap, then CL popped back beside him and started giggling like it was the funniest thing in the world. Sora spotted the furry creature and his eyes went wide because CL suddenly showed his heart by flicking his ears. This set Sora off. He snapped, shouting at CL that he'd just laughed at him, and CL only smirked before turning away. Sora snapped at CL to look him straight in the eyes, warning that if he didn't do it right now, the creature would start getting poked again right at it with those hands. Sora realized each day is packed with new, wild fun and there's nothing lined up for tomorrow, so he might be the one to chase down a bunch of those little jobs. CL tore through the air again, and the moment it buzzed around him, the guy's focus snapped right back. He basically said, think about it, I'm still clueless about who I truly am. And Sora jumped in, hopeful, like maybe he could finally use his skills because honestly, he's got the level to make it work. Sora locked eyes on CL and fired off his assessment skill to read him inside and out. A blazing window suddenly popped up in front of him and the assessment got shut off. That lit a fuse in Sora. He snapped, wait, what do you mean it's disabled? Meanwhile, weeks have already slammed by since that nasty goblin order rocked the village. Today, Sora links up with Rurika and Chris to land a brand new order. Sora marched up to the salesman he calls Uncle and shot him a bright good morning, then asked him to hand over one of the skewers, who immediately grinned, wished him good morning right back, and thrust a sizzling barbecue skewer into Sora's hands, then piled on extra juice like it was going to explode with flavor. Sora shot the man a thankful nod, but CL popped back on the horizon fast, then he snatched a piece of kebab and chowed down. But that man never clocked CL. He just figured Sora forgot to toss one piece onto his skewer, so he snapped an apology at the guy. Sora shot back, nope, I ate it already. And he said it so fast that the man never even noticed. Sora stared at CL and realized, since they came back from the village, he'd turned absolutely feral with hunger. He couldn't forget that furry creature chewing down rangy toes with bacon. Then Sora went, CL's the spirit of gluttony, plain and simple. The guy spun around to CL and snapped that he'd told him, don't steal my food in front of people. Out of nowhere, something jolted CL, and a spike of pure dread shot straight through him. CL whipped around again and bolted the other way. Sora shouted after him, demanding where he was heading this time because lately, Sora had clocked it for some reason. CL can't stand the royal castle. So I couldn't stop wondering, could he feel that nasty aura crawling out of this castle? Meanwhile, Sora had already slipped into the Adventurers Guild and staked his claim. Siphon and Arco were waiting for him there, and the moment they saw him, their faces lit up. Then the two groups just started greeting each other like old friends. Sora spun around to the guys and demanded what they were even drinking this stuff for, and Arco shot back that he was just on vacation while Siphon snickered and admitted he was too lazy to work. Siphon leaned in and asked Sora if another order had come through again. Sora grinned and said, yep, I'm waiting on Chris and Rujareka. And Siphon nodded like, got it, I understand. Siphon snapped his attention to the girl and told her to pour Sora a little drink. She promised she'd be right back, but Sora shouted that he'd only drink juice. And just like that, he dropped into his seat at the table. Arco spun to Sora with a sharp, jealous stare and asked the guy how he was holding up, because he's stuck in a squad with two beauties, and Arco straight up admitted he was green with envy. Sora snapped at the guys that they were only doing what they were told, like when they went crab hunting just the other day. Then they went hunting and Sora, still too green, crept through it way too slowly. The hunter stared at Chris, gawked at how fast she moved, and decided Sora was a total disgrace. Sora also handled his side of the whole thing, and once that guy clocked how he'd adapted, he realized he didn't need the card anymore. Sora told the guys they were also on herb collecting duty, and Siphon, smirking like he knew something, leaned in and asked, so what are you planning to do? Siphon told Sora he'd heard from other people that these guys were legendary in this line of work, and then the man grilled Sora. So, did you find a solid place for all this, or what? Sora couldn't forget Chris's warning people who can use the assessment skill are rarer than spatial magic users, and that made it insanely valuable. Sora started chugging his juice and totally lit up because he never thought that assessment skill would be this awesome, but since he didn't want to draw attention, he told the other guys, "It's nothing. We're just reading, learning how to tell herbs apart better." Arco and Siphon let out a sly laugh at the guy, then Arco snapped to his feet and cut Sora off. Stop with the work talk, because clearly he wasn't trying to hear about that at all. Arco leaned in and asked the guy what kind of relationship he had with those two nipples, and the dude nearly choked on the spot. Arco blurts out that Rurika's got a big bust and insists she's a straight boy woman. Then Chris just stays quiet, yet somehow Rurika still throws everything into her best every single time. And it's weirdly adorable. Sora's cheeks flared red as he shot back to Arco that he didn't look at girls like that, and Arco went wild grinning and pushing him to prove it by filling up, because Arco simply refused to believe Sora wasn't totally checking them out. Arco попросив Сору вибрати, яку дівчину він хоче, або, можливо, обидві одразу. Сайфон підійшов ближче, обійняв Сору і тихо сказав Арко, що він навіть сказав, адже цей Сора був просто невинним хлопчиком. Still, Siphon presses the guy and demands to know who he liked from all of them. Sora's nerves surged, and with a shaky, timid nod, he admitted, yeah, he liked it. In his head, he pictured a soft, gentle Chris. Sora's cheeks flared even brighter, and she tried to speak, but the words tangled up and came out totally unintelligible. The men were practically vibrating with impatience, desperate to hear back from Sora. Right then, the tavern door creaked open and Ririka and Chris stepped into the guild. And Ririka shot off an instant apology for keeping that guy waiting for so long. But when Sora heard their voices, he couldn't stay calm or steady for a second. Sora shot up from the table and told the guys he'd probably head out. Then Arco yanked his arm and pinned him in place, demanding why Sora was rushing like that. Arco snapped his head toward the girls and grilled them. Why on earth wouldn't they all grab a drink together? The girls shot with embarrassment, and Sora, right there himself, held his breath like the next second could shatter everything. So the whole crew plopped down together and shouted their orders for drinks. Sora and Chris were mortified by the whole awkward mess, and they kept sinking into their seats like enemies scooting way too far apart at the table and refusing to meet each other's eyes. Arco and Siphon were cackling, totally messing with the guys. A tiny grin flickered across their faces, and the guys started whispering like, yeah, it's her the one Sora's into. Then Arco snapped his head towards Siphon and said, I'll help Sora. Arco whipped around to Chris and snapped for her attention. The guy shot out of his seat and closed the distance to her. Then Arco leaned in and asked Chris, you know she's sweet, right? After that, he turned to the girl and asked straight up if she had a boyfriend. Then he slowly, gently pulled her closer to him. Rurika and Sora were absolutely terrified of what Arco was doing right now. Sora shot up to defend Chris on the spot, and when he did, that guy snapped at Arco, telling him not to say things like that because rage was burning bright at his behavior. Arco leans in and demands, so why couldn't you say it? Because Sora's basically just trying to impress a sweet girl and tell her how adorable she is. Sora's words started to glitch and his nerves spiked, and when he answered the guy, he just admitted it might be true. Arco grabbed Chris's hand and whispered that as long as she wasn't his girlfriend, he could say anything he wanted to her. Arco leaned in and asked Sora if he could ever have a relationship like that with her, so why was he trembling so badly? Arco leaned in toward Chris's lips, then turned to the girl and demanded, what are we? How do you feel about me? Because deep down, he already knew she had a soft spot for him. Suddenly, Rurika shot up from her seat and swung her hand into Arco's head hard enough to slam him into the table. Then she barked, you fool! Rurika told him, I totally get what you're feeling. But then she pushed anyway, asking if Arco could actually see that Chris was feeling uneasy. Arco shot to his feet and admitted, yeah, he was apologizing to Chris after all. Sora finally let out a breath of relief. Suddenly, Chris and Sora's eyes met, and a jolt of electricity sparked between them. Then, right after, they both snapped their heads away and blushed like crazy. Meanwhile, the guys downed their drinks and Sora hooked up with the girls to go hunt for some jobs. They marched up to the massive board and Sora leaned in, grilling the girls on what they should grab for this round. Rurika said she'd check it right away, but first, she wanted to clear up one thing. Rurika grilled Sora about whether he'd finally hit E rank he admitted he had now, but then Sora shrugged and said he was still E rank, just one step from D1. Rurika locked eyes with Chris and saw the hurt on her face, and that only made it worse. She snapped back that everything was crystal clear. Rurika said, once we finish the next order, we'll probably hit C rank, then we're gone from this country. After Rurika hears this command, she's convinced the next thing they do is part ways for good. Sora clenched the straps of his backpack hard and swore this moment would finally arrive, but part of him still prayed it wouldn't come this soon. Sora could stare at this forever and never blink yet. No matter how badly he wants to keep it going, time is already sprinting toward the end. One moment slips away, and just like that, the time they've had together is running out fast. After he finished the order, Sora grabbed the card and checked his rank only to see it glaring back at him, a D rank. Sora blinked in surprise because he never expected something like this to hit him so fast. Ruka practically lit up and told Sora the guy had finally clawed his way up to D rank, then fired off loud congratulations while Sora turned to the girls and announced that the two of them had just skyrocketed to C rank. Sadness burned in his eyes as he told the girls straight up that their squad was about to fall apart. So I turned to the girls and asked what the two of them were planning to do next. Roshai told them they'd start as an escort to the city of Phesis, and once they were done, they'd head straight for the Animal Kingdom. So I figured the girls were chatting about escorts, and he couldn't help wondering what kind of order that was. Sora spun around to the girls and blurted out that he had a request they couldn't ignore. Sora stepped up and begged the girls to let him join their order. Rurika and Chris went tense, then shot the guy a burst of excited stares. Sora said that if he's got the chance, he's going to grab it and load up on experience ordering escorts. Sora told him, "Once we hit Physa's, I'll grab a carriage and get you back to the capital right away." And the guy said he'd understand if they decided to turn him down. A sweet little smile bloomed across the girls' faces. Chris shot the guy back that they'd only do it if he came with them, and Rurika pushed him to ask whether they could move a 3-person team into this order. Sora figured it would take around 10 days to reach Phesis, but Mikari still had her nerves up since it was a C-ranked quest still. After that, she finally let him go. And now, with only 5 days left on the clock, Rurika and Chris finally get to catch their breath. Because after that, the order is coming. Sora can't shake the creepy feeling that won't let go. Sora lugged a giant backpack stuffed with supplies, and with that non-stop grind in his head, he kept snatching even more delivery orders than usual just to stay busy, leaving everyone stunned by his ridiculous stamina. He figured those two had lost their home and fled the country after the war so they could just pick a new place to settle down, right? But then, in the blink of an eye, his luggage vanished like it was swallowed by thin air. He couldn't stop wondering why those girls were roaming from city to city and jumping across countries like they had a secret mission. Sora said, "That's the last order for today. Someone's got to haul it to North Street." Then he paused like it was obvious, like it had to be out there somewhere. Sora halted by a gorgeous stone-lined street, and all around him, groups of guys had girls hanging close, turning the whole place into a lively, entertained buzz. Sora spotted it from the window, men gambling while those gorgeous girls lounged into massages, and then he noticed someone standing there, locked in a tight hug. That hit the guy so hard, he turned beet red. He never expected to see something like that. Suddenly, Arko barked, "Sora, you're in a filthy place," and then smirked, offering to show him some nice girls, if he wanted. Sora shot back, nerves blasting, "No, I don't need to. I'm on delivery right now." Arka shot back, "Yeah, that's exactly what I do," while Sora barked, "It's real." And then the delivery headed straight to an institution called the Dancing Black Rabbit. Out of nowhere, the girls swarmed the guy and said the order was theirs, then they thanked him for delivering it, while Sora was already gasping, shaking hard with embarrassment, and one of the girls asked why he didn't stay and play with them. Sora shot back instantly. No way was he doing that. He bolted out of there, told the girls he had a job to handle, and went straight off. Sora wandered down the street. Sure, the delivery was finally done, so he figured it was time to bolt for home. Suddenly, the guy's gaze slammed to a stop and Sora's heart dropped into horror. Sora spotted Chris right in front of him, posted near the entrance of one of the buildings. He couldn't wrap his head around it why she was alone out there, surrounded by nothing but prostitutes. Sora saw the man hook Chris by the arm and start yanking her straight into his house. Sora was horrified. Like his blood turned cold. He had no clue what that girl was even doing there. Kristen loved his act, but she snapped, "Stop, don't do a single wrong thing to me." And right then, Sora realized the girl was in real danger and had to be saved. The guy shouted at Chris with everything he had, loud enough for the whole street to hear. Chris caught a familiar voice in the air, snapped her head toward the guy. The girl's face lit up. Thank goodness it was Sora. She bolted straight to him, and the guy guarding the door snapped to Chris, asking if she had a boyfriend. Chris sprinted up to Sora, grateful beyond words, because he just saved her from a creep's grip. Sora told the girl he was just relieved she was okay, but then he turned to Chris and demanded what she was doing in a place like that, because he never, not once, expected to see her here. Chris squirmed with embarrassment and didn't say a word, so she turned to Sora and demanded to know what he was doing there. Sora eyed the girl, confused. Then Chris grit her teeth, clutched her fist tight, and demanded Sora explain why she was treating her like she'd been up to something bad. Sora snapped back, "No, don't even think about it," and just reminded Chris he only had a delivery to drop off, so he brought the order here. Chris dropped his gaze and told her, "Yeah, I get you." Chris caught Sora's attention and said she needed to talk then. Once the delivery was over, Sora asked if they could meet up with Rurika, and he immediately agreed. The guys kicked back at a coffee shop. Chris spilled every detail of her tale to the guys, and Rurika pressed the girl hard, asking if she'd gone to the slavers herself. Rurika spun toward Sora and poured out her gratitude for saving Chris. Then Rurika spun on Chris and snapped that he had to stop doing these stupid moves. Chris swallowed hard, timidly apologizing to her. Chris said everything she does hangs on her, like her choices, her rules, her fate. Rurika breathed easier hearing that, and she immediately thanked Chris for making it sound like she could finally do something that mattered. Rurika warned that even with all that said, the dark, dangerous spots are everywhere, so she's got to watch her every move. Sora snapped his eyes to the girls and realized this time Roka was furious, like he'd never seen before. Sora spun toward Chris and asked what she wanted to tell him. Chris and Rurika shot each other a look, then nodded like they were ready to go. Rurik told the guy, "We've talked this over for ages now. It's time for you and Sora to sit down and talk." And then Chris rushed in, apologizing that he dragged the conversation too long. Chris leaned in and admitted to Sora that they were on the road searching for someone. Sora blinked at the girls in shock and blurted out, "Who are you talking about?" Chris told them they were hunting down their childhood friend, the one they'd torn apart during the war. Sora turned back to the girls and pushed again, asking if they were still headed out in search of friends. Chris shot back that they'd already said it back when the war hit. Their hometown got wrecked too, and 10 years ago, the first city to fall after the fighting started was their own. Then it all crumbled to dust, and the kids scrambled to break free by hiding in the one building that still stood. Little Rurika sobbed at the top of her lungs, and she couldn't stop. Her friend snapped that she was a total crybaby, but another girl tried to soothe her, so she insisted, "Don't fret, the goddesses will swoop in and save us." Sarah was always a cheerful path beast girl, and Eris was a hard-working elf, always 4 of them in total. That's when the Borscht Kingdom crashed the party, attacking without mercy. Grandma burst into the kids' room and shouted for everyone to hear. Grandma told the guys the front is already set and enemy soldiers are closing in on them fast. Grandma screamed at the guys to bolt into the woods right now and not to slow down a single second. Grandma stared them down and told the kids, "Whatever happens, don't let them catch you." And with terror blazing in their eyes, the kids bolted into the distance, fleeing the enemy soldiers who were closing in fast. At one point, Serena Chris got torn apart, and chaos swallowed them as they vanished into the crowd. Trying to find each other was useless once the panic hit. At the very last second, Sarah burst out, telling Chris they'd meet up later at the ghost tree. Chris lunged for the sulfur, but her hand wouldn't move an inch. Then a massive crowd surged forward, barreling through everything and smashing it to pieces. Once the chaos finally eased up, Chris headed straight to the exact spot Gray had marked for him. The girl shook with pain and exhaustion, her body riddled with wounds, still missing one shoe. Chris reached the ghost tree, but the rest of her girls weren't anywhere in sight. But Rurika stayed perched on a rock by the tree, watching the path and waiting for her friends to show up. The moment she spotted Chris, tears of pure joy flooded her eyes, like she finally proved at least one of her loved ones was still out there. Roperka sprang off the rock like a bullet and sprinted straight to Chris. She wrapped Chris in the tightest hug, then clung on like she'd never let go. The girls burst into bitter tears, terrified they would never see the rest of their friends again. No matter how long they waited, the others never showed up. So Chris leaned in and told Sora, "That's why we're taking this trip to find our precious friends." Sora listened to her tale and felt his heart drop. He couldn't believe they'd lived through something that painful. Out of all their childhood friends, only Rurika and Chris never let go. They stayed side by side, backing each other up all the way to the very end. Sora finally figured out this was the real reason those two loved each other that hard. Sora was bursting with gratitude as the girls poured out their childhood story, brutally sad but completely honest. Sora leaned in and grilled the girls for any clues, any leads where they could hunt for their friends. Rurika snapped back that kids taken during the war were usually dragged into slavery, then shipped off to different places. If their friends get snatched up and sold into slavery, then they could be anywhere in the world. That's how Chris and Rurika got pulled into the life of adventurers, and now they chase answers everywhere, asking about themselves in all kinds of places. Chris leaned in and told Sora that before they even left the capital, she'd rushed to a slave trader and begged for a favor. She demanded he reach out to the guild if he knew anything about Sarah or Eris, and she even threw him money to make sure he did. But somehow, the man yanked her by the hand and hauled her straight to his house. Then Chris finally realized she couldn't afford to slip up anymore. Sora listened to the girls and felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was exactly where the clues were hiding. Sora whipped around to the girls and confessed, shaking his voice, "This is hard to say, and he knows it might sound downright cruel." Sora still said, 10 years have flown since the war, but the truth hit hard after that much time. Nobody can promise these two are even still alive. Sora leaned in and demanded the girls explain why they were still so sure they were alive. Chris and Rurika locked eyes, then flashed each other sweet smiles like they shared the same secret. The girls clenched their fists and thrust their hands toward Sora, ready to back him up. 2 amulets sat on their palms, gleaming like they meant something. Sora snapped with surprise and blurted out to the girls, "What is it?" Rurika told him, "These are spirit amulets." And then Grandma chimed in, 4 of them can link up into one whole. Rurika was sure the amulet was buzzing with proof Sarah and Eris were alive, and they desperately wanted to meet her. Rurika admitted, "I know this might not sound great, but she still went for it." Honestly, they'd rather stay with Sora a little longer. but they have to keep pushing because their friends aren't going to find themselves. Sora stiffened for a split second, realizing this was their call to hunt down the girls and knowing with absolute certainty that he could trust these two. But wow, those traits are even stronger than he ever imagined. The girls have turned into full-blown adventurers, always shadowed by danger, pushing through it to find their lost friends. So Sora was certain he'd be proud to have stood in their squad once, and he spun to the girls and told them he believed in them with all his heart because they were going to succeed. No question. Sora told everyone he's heading to every kind of country, and that means he'll hunt down clues about Sarah and Eris along the way. Rika and Chris instantly felt awful for him, and Rika told Sora he didn't deserve this, and Chris jumped in fast, saying they didn't want to drag him into all their worries and mess. But Sora shot back that it would never, ever bring him so much as a single problem. He swore you've got it twisted. He's not trying to start trouble, he just desperately wants to help the girls find what they're looking for. That hit Raraka and Chris hard, and the words from that guy started replaying in their heads. Chris tried to hide it, but tiny tears shimmered in her eyes. This mattered more than anything. Sora spotted those tears and reached out his own, offering comfort, and the girls mirrored him by lifting their hands in response. Chris and Rurka couldn't take it anymore, and the tears just burst out of them right then, while the girls turned to Sora and thanked her for standing by them through the hardest moment of their lives. Meanwhile, only 3 days are left before he has to order an escort. Sora jolted awake that morning, stretched hard, and practically gushed that the day felt amazing. Then he remembered last night when he boosted his detection skill and caught something weird. He replayed it in his head again and again, then it finally clicked. Someone was watching him, and that same gut-churning feeling never let up, because now he was dead certain they were tracking every single thing he did. It left him staring, like, who's watching me? So Sora grabbed the stealth skill and a few more that caught his eye. Meanwhile, this guy's got serious stealth skills. He can wipe away his presence so no one can spot him. Then Elkmive War lets him craft all kinds of stuff from ingredients, and with Cooking VN, he learns how to cook in a whole new world. Sora stared at the status bar, wondering why anyone was eyeing him, but for now, he shrugged it off and acted like he didn't see a thing. Still, the guy wrestled with the decision for ages should he really take on that cooking skill. After all, when you're trying to roam a huge world, good food can't hurt anyone. And if you're really going to roam the world, you'd better know every ingredient that's deadly, and everyone you can safely eat, because knowing how to mix them right can mean the difference between living and disaster. Meanwhile, Sora strolled down a narrow path, snapped his gaze up at the sky, and spotted massive birds soaring overhead. Then his mind immediately started racing about what today had in store. First, he heads into the forest, the place where he normally grabs herbs to test his new skills and sharpen them for real. Even with the wolves wiped out, his footsteps still shake, and fear grips him hard as he keeps moving deeper in. Sora dropped into a small clearing and instantly knew this spot was made for him. But right before all that, the guy decided to slam the brakes and take a quick breather. Sora grabbed a plate, admitted he was a little hungry, and said it was snack time because he'd saved the last bite of bacon for exactly this. In his inventory, he'd also packed a bundle of firewood, rations, and bacon. Sora used his skills, yanked the bacon out of his inventory, and watched it land on his plate. Sora stared at the plate, stunned because the guy realized the last piece of bacon had gone rotten, sprouting mold that screamed it was absolutely not fit to eat. Sora explained that if his spatial magic was too weak, time wouldn't freeze at all, no stopping it, and the guy apologized for losing his food, but Sora told him straight he just needed to level up his spatial magic. Suddenly, CL jabbed Sora's face again and again like they were cheering him on. Sora blinked in surprise and asked if CL was really telling him not to worry. Sora let out a small laugh and thanked the furry creature for backing him up, but the guy still assumed it wasn't his touch that made the difference. Sora mulled it over for a moment, then decided he'd redo everything, starting fresh from the village days. He planned to cook bacon exactly the way they taught him, and Sale nodded like, "Yup, that's the right move." Sora stared at the groceries and grinned. Bacon was on the menu, made with pork. Then the guy pulled out some wolf meat just to see what would happen. After a while, Sora told everyone, "I cooked all the meat exactly like the headman said." Then he grabbed the tree he'd brought from the village, but getting it set up still had the guy struggling hard. Out of nowhere, a knife lunged from Sora's hand, and before that guy could even blink, it slammed a splinter straight into him. His finger ballooned with swelling and screamed with pain, and CL couldn't help but feel bad for Sora. His heart sank with him. Even with that injury still haunting him, Sora slid the wood right to the bottom of the pan. Then he covered it with a tough, water-loving mesh of grass to keep the meat safely away from the blazing coals. Next, Sora tossed the meat on the grill and slapped the skin over it like a lid to block the smoke. Then he had no choice but to sit there and wait. Right in front of his eyes, a sudden flash popped up. Va attention! And it basically told him this: if he wanted the best taste, he'd better smoke wolf meat longer than pork. Sora snapped to it right away. This hint was all because of his cooking, and he just told that guy to let the wolf meat sit longer, so he told him again, then clenched his hands and waited as the dish finished. Out of nowhere, he caught these eerie sounds creeping up beside him. Sora snapped his head around and spotted two strange creatures lurking there. Sora spotted them and instantly thought, they're adorable. The animals hooked his attention, so he leaned in and used the assessment skill to figure out who they were. Sora was told these creatures are called Michiwu, and they live out in the forest so gentle to pet that just touching them leaves you feeling instantly calm. Rui was into it, so he shot his hand out toward Michivo, then the animals immediately snapped away, huddled off, and sulked like he'd offended them, leaving Rui stunned and realizing they didn't trust him at all, so he couldn't get anywhere near the poor things. It crushed the guy's mood, but he clutched his nerve and kept moving, then went for his new stealth skill. This move let Soru creep right up to Michuo, softly petting their fluffy fur, while his stealth tech killed his visibility down to the point it even jammed surveillance. Sora couldn't stop smiling at how soft the animal's fur felt, slick, smooth, and silky as silk. Then the animal started crawling up Sora's clothes, inch by inch. Climbing all the way higher, Sora just soaked it in, grinning at how adorable they were, and honestly, it felt like a blessing straight from the sky. Suddenly, Sora felt CL's cold, piercing stare lock onto him like the guy's catching feelings, jealous of him, glaring from across the room. Sora snapped his head to CL and blurted that he couldn't do this to him. Then even with Sora's apology, the furry creature spun away from the guy and shot off into the sky. Sora sprinted after CL, trying to stop the guy from getting offended, and right then, the meat kept cooking. After a while, Sora finally decided to check the meat, and the guy peeled back the skin, using it like a lid, then stared in awe at what was inside. Sora said the meat looked a bit washed out and pale, but the smell was the exact same as back in the village. Sora split 2 chunks of meat onto 2 different forks, told CL they'd each get their own bite, then shoved 1 fork into the furry creature's hands. It devoured the meat in 1 second, while Sora chomped down on his share too. Sora and CL absolutely lit up, raving about how insanely delicious it was. Sora admitted his dish still couldn't match the village's flavor, but the heat hit hard. Every bite was insanely tasty. The pork came out so juicy it practically melted, and the wolf meat even lost its awful smell once the wood smoke aroma kicked in. So in the end, both dishes were absolutely delicious. Sora and CL were beaming, and the guy bragged that he'd packed in so much bread and bacon, then he leaned in and urged CL to try her hand at alchemy. Sora glanced at the status bar and realized he could already brew potions, but the recipe was limited to herbs. Medicinal herbs and endurance herbs were the only ingredients he had. For the potion, the guy had to grab medicinal herbs, but Sora couldn't believe it. He didn't even need a pot to brew it. Next, Soryu had to pour mana into them and picture the outcome with his whole mind, because this was no ordinary drink. It was a potion. Sora toiled on it for a while, then boom, he felt a tiny bottle snap right into his hands, and his eyes went wide as he blurted, "Wait, did I really make a real potion?" This potion sat perfectly with a flask, but Sora couldn't make sense of whatever logic it was supposed to follow, because the guy couldn't tell if it was the real deal or just a gimmick, so Sora kicked in his assessment skill. Soru got told the potion already heals wounds, you can chug it or dump it out, but when he tried it, the restoration barely did anything, and the quality was straight up trash. Sora's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. He insisted that even if the potion was low quality, it was still a regular potion, and he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that he'd made it himself. But still, Sora couldn't stop wondering, was his potion finally doing exactly what it was supposed to? He told him to try it on that splinter he'd gotten earlier, and Sora squeezed in a few drops straight onto the wound. After a beat, the sting in Sora's finger vanished, but the spot was still glaring red. He shot back that the healing barely mattered, and then straight up confident declared everything was totally fine. Then he went for broke fresh, top tier herbs, and he poured in even more mana. Sora grabbed a medicinal herb so premium it practically hummed with power. The guy clutched a little bottle in his hands again, and Sora instantly snapped her assessment onto it. It was a wound mending potion, sip it or pour it out for healing. The problem, it only helped a little, and the quality was painfully low. Sora mulled it over and admitted the recovery effect crept up from basically nothing to just small, but the quality stayed terrible, so yeah, he's still going to need to dump more skill points. Sora couldn't make up his mind should he drink the potion or dump it out. Then the guy's curiosity won, and he finally decided to taste it for himself. Suddenly, the guy jolted and spat out every last drop of the potion right as it flew straight into CL. Sora said it was insanely bitter and the flavor was so disgusting it practically made him gag. He immediately forced himself to accept one terrifying truth. His body couldn't get hurt anymore, so if it came to it, he'd just drink it. After that, Sora didn't just keep his dish to himself, he handed it to Rurika, then treated Chris and Makara too, and that homemade bacon had the girls going wild, stuffing their faces nonstop and shouting that he was basically a magician. Meanwhile, the day of the escort order finally hits, and Sora cranks his storage magic sky high, stuffing it full of every handy thing he just got from the kebab seller. And now Sora was fired up and ready to break out and move. The innkeeper warned Sora it would be painfully lonely there now, but Sora just told her, "Don't worry, I'll be back, and then you'll have me under your care again." The host grinned, waved him out, and practically begged, "Come back ASAP, there'll always be a spot for you." Then they shared one last goodbye, and after a month at that hotel, he planned to slip out for a short time. Sora stole a quick glance at the land that raised him, like the moment might vanish. He's been grinding for this moment for ages, like stacking up extra bacon in the kitchen, then drilling his fencing skills until they leveled up. And he cranked up his levels too. Now he can finally make out bits of that monster professionalist, which was basically unreadable before, and the names inside include alchemist, cook, and thief. Sora looked at his skills and figured, so that's what I can become already. But then he worried he might not get to change it later. Sora can't read it all yet. Every page feels brutally hard to parse, so he decides to wait and tackle it again once he levels up. So we marched up to the gate, and right away we heard Rurika and Chris yelling at that guy, calling him over to them. Sora told the girls, "There are way too many people here," and Rurika shot back, "Yep, this time it's 7 horse-drawn wagons plus 5 escort squads." Sora said it out loud. Turns out they're not the only ones keeping watch. Right then, a man stepped out of nowhere and greeted everyone present with a bright, "Good morning." Dalton bowed to everyone and told them he was grateful they'd agreed to the escort order. Then he pointed to himself and announced, "I'm Dalton," explaining he'd be leading this caravan. He said, "Here's the plan. Once we slip out through the western gate, we'll march for 4 brutal days to Olka, stop there for a full day, then hit the road again for 6 more days until we finally reach Thesis, the trading city we're after." Dalton admitted that, for at least a little while, he actually looked forward to working with them. Then he bowed again, and the whole room erupted in applause. He also said the veteran mountain goblins would step in and keep the order locked down. It was a C-rank squad, and Dalton shot a few sharp words straight to the leader. Sora nearly froze when he spotted Siphon there, and Siphon lit up with a cheerful shout like, "Can you believe we're on the same order together?" Siphon beamed as he wrapped the girl in a big hug, then practically shouted at everyone, "So you heard, right? Ray proposed." The girl's cheeks warmed with a little embarrassment. Still, Siphon's grin vanished. He snapped into serious mode and got ready to deliver a speech. The guy introduced himself again, and this time he boasted he was the leader of the Mountain Goblin Squad. Siphon had heard they had a bunch of newbies there right on their very first escort mission. The man warned them the road ahead would be brutal and told them to stay alert for monsters and robbers every step of the way. Then Siphon kicked back and said, "Hey, just enjoy this mission." And when Siphon hit the scene, everyone erupted with cheers and rallied behind him like there was no turning back. I figured this was his very first escort order and it was about to kick off any second. The guard shouted, "Open the gate!" and a massive line of horse-drawn carts thundered forward with people packed in tight. I was so sure until they finally rolled into Olka, because right then, the wagons stopped being light and started hauling serious cargo. So everything had to creep along, and since there aren't any seats, everyone just had to trudge right beside the wagons. Rureka whipped around to Sora and told him to throw everything they had into it, and Sora backed her up without hesitation. One of the task participants pointed at Sora and the girls and shouted, "So you're newbies too?" Sora said, "Yup, I'm the only one like that," and admitted the girls were already locked in with the same kind of orders. Then the guy nodded, claimed he understood it all, and said, "Cool, we're friends from here." He burst out laughing and said this was their first escort order, then shrugged like it was going to be a piece of cake, just walk side by side. Sorry, nodded, and backed him up, saying he was right. Ruhr snapped his face serious and warned the guys, "Don't you dare underestimate this," because they'd already handled orders like it before, and they were brutal, packed with problems. The guy told the girl it was totally doable for 2 young ladies because they had more than enough strength. Siphon glanced at the guys and leaned in to tell the girl he figured they were really just having fun. The girl shot back that she couldn't stop worrying about the newcomers and whether everything would be alright for them, because deep down, her concern was eating her alive. Siphon let out a laugh and said, "Yeah, it looks simple, but trust me, it's not going to be that easy. They've got to stay sharp and watch every corner, because you never know when monsters or bandits are about to come crashing in, especially with relentless walking, pushing them forward. It's a simple order, but it's got teeth. And if even a piece of the cargo gets stolen or damaged, that massive fine snaps them into action because that unrelenting guard duty grind your mind down. At the same time, you've got to match the wagon's brutal speed or your endurance is getting crushed." Siphons warned that first-time adventurers who accept an escort job usually crawl back exhausted and dead. The girl asked Siphon, "If you already know all this, why not drop us some advice?" And Siphon tells them, "Don't worry, no serious danger will hit until you reach Olka, and trust me, getting through trouble yourselves is exactly what'll make you grow." Siphon told the girl to look at them, because they were bursting with happiness, so either they're clueless or they've actually got real potential, and she'll find out soon enough. An hour dragged by, then he snapped his gaze forward and said someone's coming back again. He snatched his sword and went on high alert. Then the cart rolled past, and that tension melted out of him. He told them that every time a cart rattles past, his gut screams that the driver could be bandits playing dress up, and the girl snapped back that the moment she hears a rustle in the grass, she instantly expects a monster to leap out. Then another guy just groaned that he's wiped clean out. The guy told them to keep pushing and stay on guard nonstop. Yeah, easy. It was not. Then, out of nowhere, Sora shoved a mug of water into the guy's hands. They were totally stunned, then immediately gulped down water to quench their thirst, and the girl turned to Sora asking if he could use simple magic. He stared at Sora and said, "You're not tired," then asked if Sora was a beginner like them. Sora's nerves kicked in, and he shot back, "Yeah, I am," while the other guy assumed it was his walking skill doing all the saving. Sora figured he could scan the other carts and the whole area with his detection skill, so he triggered it right away, and the guy didn't burn any SP using skills since he's on foot. Sora figured he could stack guild XP by calling escorts and grinding his skills at the same time, because yeah, he gets XP for every step, so it's like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone or 3. Sora couldn't shake the feeling that maybe they shouldn't be telling him about this, but the guy's face lit up with shock, and he straight up demanded to know why Sora was grinning. Sora shrugged and said he just liked to walk, and everyone around him went slack-jawed because their strength was draining fast. Sora said, "This is just how I'm built," and the guy snapped back, "You're just crazy." And just like that, 10 brutal hours flew by. Siphon spun around to the guys, flashed a calm grin, and insisted everything was fine, that they were good fellows. Then he leaned in and told them to camp there for the night. But after that grueling road, the guys were completely wiped out and they dropped to the ground like all the fight left their bodies. Siphon leaned in and grilled the guys about what went down because yeah, it was only day 1. If they could just reach Olka, they'd finally get to ride the wagons. But the second that promise landed, everyone started snapping with resentment, stuck walking for 3 more brutal days. Suddenly, Siphon's eyes lock onto something out of nowhere. The man spotted Sora crouching over Chris and Rureka, scrambling to steady them. Then Sora shot the girls a worried look and asked if they were okay. Siphon's eyes widened as he realized Sora's raw strength and brutal endurance, and he admitted Sora had more than delivered. Siphon whipped around to Sora and demanded to know if he could still stand and walk. If he could, he'd help them set up camp. Sora nodded and said he'd give it his best shot. But they just couldn't wrap their heads around how Sora was still able to move. As the first day finally bled into night, evening rolled in. Siphon spun to Sora and snapped that they had to cook first, then asked if Sora knew how to make food. Rurika blurted, "Of course," while Chris chimed in, "We can cook too, but only after they caught their breath." Their client delivers every ingredient for dinner, and this is the first time Sora has ever used a pot this massive. He's sweating bullets, praying he'll pull it off. Sora figured there were a few ingredients in there he'd never tasted before, but his cooking talent would handle the rest. Tonight, the guys are going to dig into a steaming, hearty soup packed with fragrant spices for dinner. He realized that no matter how brutal the journey gets, a solid meal can smash every obstacle out of the way. Rureka took one taste, told Sora, "This soup hits hard with spice, but it's a cool kind of burn," and Chris chimed in that it's packed with all kinds of different ingredients. Rureka insisted she knew Sora could cook, but he blew her mind. He could cook with anything. Then Sora smirked and told her the truth. It wasn't magic. They helped him, that's why. Chris and Rika shot each other a look, like, "We'll answer him," but Sora cut in first, claiming he already knew exactly what they were trying to tell the guy. Sora asked the girls if they wanted seconds, but handing it all off to someone else felt like a drag. And just like that, Sora pulls out a plate of bacon and shoves it into the girls' hands, then the cheers explode with pure joy. Chris and Rurika were grinning so hard they could have lit the room, and they declared, "This bacon is the best." Sora told him it was tucked away in his magic storeroom. There was still a ton of it left in there, and the guy couldn't help but feel relieved. He'd thought of stacking it all like that. Suddenly, Sora shot up and started to leave, so the girls immediately turned to the guy and demanded, "Where are you going?" Sora grabbed a few slices of bacon, looked at the girls, and said the others were probably starving too, then he bolted off to share it. They blinked in mild shock, then grinned anyway, totally won over by how thoughtfully that guy treated them. Right then, a squad of rank C Oxum's mountain goblins huddled in a tight little circle, chewing dinner and chatting like they owned the place. Sora swept up to them and wished them a good evening, and Siphon couldn't help feeling relieved that Sora had shown up. The man pulled the guy into a tight hug and told him to sit with them, and Sora immediately apologized to the guys for crashing their moment. "You know, stepped up," greeted Sora, and said Siphon had basically spilled everything about him. That totally threw the guy off. Siphon leaned in and told Sora, "That's my wife. Her name is Yuno," and the guy's shock only doubled. Siphon leaned in and told the guy, "We were just talking about you, and yeah, we've got a character right here." One of the squad members leaned in and told the guy his walking pace was insanely solid today, and the rest of the crew nodded right along. He was burning with embarrassment, and he stammered out a shy thank you to them. "So I told the squad, he's got something lined up for you guys," and I figured maybe you'd want it too. Siphon shot back to Sora that he still cared about them deeply and that he hadn't forgotten them for a second. The man blurted out to Sora, "What is this like?" He'd never seen anything like it in his life, then hit him with the same question, "So is it already cooked or raw?" The guys made a move and dove into the guy's dish. They blurted out, wide-eyed and amazed, that it tasted absolutely incredible. Siphon told him this kind of treasure was almost never even found in the capital, and only laughed and said it tasted so insanely good she'd eat it every single day. Sora was over the moon. The guys loved his dish. He even learned how to make it back in the village. After all, that's where they went to place the order. Suddenly, Siphon's smile vanished. His face went stone cold, serious, and he snapped his attention to Sora. Siphon said, "I already heard it. Me and the girls are about to break up our squad." So he stepped up and asked the guy straight up, "Want to join our squad?" The guy stared at the man, and pure shock hit him instantly. Siphon bragged that his stamina is rock solid, his legs are built like steel, his lower back never gives up, and yeah, he can whip up amazing dishes too. Siphon was 100 convinced that if Sora came with them, it'd be a blast and totally worth it. Then the rest of the squad hit him with, "Your soup is seriously delicious." Sora's nerves were on fire, and Siphon cut in to say this wasn't a terrible offer at all. Sora shot back to Siphon, basically saying, "Man, I'm honored you think that highly of me." But once he teamed up with Baraka and Chris, he finally saw it. There was still a brutal, long road ahead. That's why Sora's determined to roam solo for a while, but right now, he's still not quite able to fend for himself. Still, even after he gave his answer, Sora leaned in and told the guys to waste zero time, invite him right back into your squad. Siphon blushed hard and admitted he'd been rejected. Sora tensed up, shot the guys an apology, and still he thanked them for the invite anyway. Siphon snapped back that it was a total disaster, yet there was nothing he could do. "You told Soru, yeah, if you change your mind, go ahead and let them know." Sora turned to all the guys and thanked them for backing him up. At that exact moment, Sora got this weird, gut-deep feeling like someone out there was staring right at him. He's terrified that if he hops into another squad, he'll drag everyone into danger. That evening, Sora leaned in and spilled his dream to the other adventurers and merchants. Then he soaked up every wild story this world had to offer. Meanwhile, the night had already gone down hard. Sora lay beside Chris, convinced she could hear every breath. And Chris just couldn't make sense of it, because sleep wouldn't come for him, so Sora tried something, forcing herself to drift while keeping her mind working the whole time. 3 days later, that non-stop line of adventurers finally rolled into Olka, their first stop, and the moment they hit the ground, the guys erupted in cheers, yelling that they were finally right where they needed to be. Sora swore the city had to be Olka fewer towering skyscrapers than the capital, sure, but the skyline was jaw-dropping, and the whole place looked unreal, straight up beautiful. Siphon spun around to the guys and told them, "You're all doing great." The man told them to unload the wagons right now, because tomorrow they finally get a day off, and he ordered the guys to rest while that chance is there. Suddenly, Siphon blurted out, "Hey, remember, this part is dangerous," and then snapped, "Don't forget to restock your potions, just in case." Siphon stared at the guys and knew they weren't even hearing him, so they all just nodded along and agreed to head out for lunch right now. Chris whipped around to Sora and promised, "We'll be free tomorrow," and Rurika lit up, asking him what they were going to do. Sora grinned at the girls and told them, "Let's do something tomorrow." The crew's final stop is the trading city of Phasis, but first, merchants peel off and unload their goods, restocking everything right there in the capital city of Olka. The rest of the adventures pure mess around time hanging in bars, everyone wasting time their own way, like one plan to sleep all day. As for Sora and the girls, they've got plans locked in for today. First, Sora strides up to the horses and greets them with a bright, "Good morning." Rows of horses stood lined up in front of the guys hauling that heavy load into the city. Sora and the girls stood by the horse carts, with buckets of water sitting right beside them, and everyone braced themselves because the hard work was about to start. Sora said, "Today's horse care day," and the boys grabbed buckets, rags, and combing brushes, plus a whole bag of treats for the horses. Chris whirled toward the guy and demanded, "So what made you decide to do this today?" Sora shot back that this was the first time he'd ever seen them. So yeah, passing up the chance feels like a sin. Sora thanked the girls for teaming up with him even though exhaustion weighed on them. And Chris shot back that it wasn't just that she wanted to see the horses too, while Rurika chimed in that they were totally okay as long as they got a solid sleep. So I told the girls, "That's awesome." Dalton even handed him a couple of tips yesterday, so they're ready to hit the grind now. Sora told the girls to feed the horses first, and the guy swears this world's horses are also picky digging into veggie carrots too. Sora offered the carrot to the horse, sniffed it first, then the moment it crunched, the horse gobbled it down happily. Chris tried feeding her horse, and it snapped up a carrot in an instant. Then the girl lit up and said that horse was absolutely adorable. Then she piled on a few more carrots, smiled at the horse, and told it to pig out because she still had plenty of vegetables left. The horse didn't waste a second and gobbled up every single thing she handed it. Suddenly, the girl's bag of vegetables went bone dry just like that, and she snapped, stunned, asking if the horse had already gobbled everything up and left her with nothing but empty hands. Chris told the horse she'd be back soon to grab more carrots, but the horse had totally different ideas, staring hard at Chris's head like she was about to spring a trap, and that made the girl go on high alert. The horse started munching on Chris's hair, and the girl instantly freaked out, screaming like crazy, while Sora and Rurika rushed over right away to make sure her hair stayed intact. The guys dove into getting acquainted with the horses, stroking them like they were old friends while Rubika stared, convinced this one was scarfing down food way too fast, and Sora. He couldn't stop smiling at just how adorable they were. Next, Sora decided it was time to tackle the horses. He grabbed a bucket of water and a cloth, ready to scrub them down. The guy dumped a whole bucket of water on the horse and snapped that it looked filthy after 4 days of trudging. So yeah, he was determined to scrub it up and make it shine. The girl slid in beside him and jumped right to work, soaking the horses with bucket after bucket of water, scrubbing them clean with a rag, and laughing the whole time. Sora snapped his head toward the horse and told it they were done because washing that thing is a total nightmare for one guy, and it's gonna take forever. Right away, Sora realized they'd burn through a whole day if they kept that pace. Then it hit him, and he remembered something. Sora tapped into his cleaning skill, and just like that, everything around him started shifting in the blink of an eye. The horses shined like they'd been freshly groomed, then they erupted with happiness, neighing, prancing, and joyfully jumping like they couldn't wait to play. Sora let out a small laugh and said, "Alright, now we're gonna comb that fur." Sora stepped up to one horse and started brushing it, rubbing its coat until the bristles glided like butter while the man just bragged about his perfect physique. Sora was certain the merchants had nurtured those creatures with absolute care. Rureka told the guy it felt unbelievably nice, and that's why the girl wanted to try it too. So Chris jumped right in with the same craving. The kids gently stroked and scratched the animal's fur with loving hands like they were handling something precious. Suddenly, Sora heard a weird noise right behind him. He snapped his head up and there was CL standing there. Sora noticed CL was crushed with sadness, like he was silently begging the guy for something, so Sora figured the furry creature just wanted to be petted. Then the guy snapped his head up and told CL, point blank, that he wasn't allowed to get near him or touch him. This absolutely wrecks CL, and before the guy can blink, he shoots off into the sky again. He didn't soar far before sadness crashed over him, and Sora clocked it instantly. He gave a sly little smile and slammed storage magic into place, then pulled out a tiny strip of bacon from his inventory, and CL instantly clocked it. Sora was holding food. A second later, CL was already chewing through that piece like it was nothing. Right after that, he shot off again, leaving the guy staring. Sora couldn't believe how arrogant that dude was. Meanwhile, the guys keep hustling, scrubbing, scraping, and then hauling out fresh feed for the horses. Dalton rolled up to the guys and saw Sora and the girls lining the horses up perfectly, and the man thanked them for taking care of the animals. He could even hear their happy neighing ringing in the air. I told him he shouldn't thank them, and honestly, it was an amazing experience then. Rarika stepped in, backed the guy up, and gushed that the horses were super cute. Dalton leaned in and grilled the guys about what it truly was, and when he heard them say horses are great partners for people, relief washed over him. Dalton gently patted the horse and grinned, saying it seemed like the animals loved them, and then he asked the guys if they wanted to hop on and try riding. He shot back instantly, like, yeah, of course. Dalton swung the boys onto their horses and beamed, telling them they were doing great. And so Dalton led the crew out for a quick stroll while Sora was still freaking out, convinced he didn't realize he was literally riding a horse right now. Russia cornered Dalton and demanded to know why they were so used to people. Then Dalton fired back that horses can read emotions like a sixth sense. The fact they're so calm and laid back tells you one thing: these are genuinely kind-hearted souls. Sora shot Alton a question, like, do you really believe that? And Alton could only truly hope that it was actually true. Soren's eyes snapped to a breathtaking view, the sun blazing as it slipped behind those towering mountains. Sora stared out, awestruck at how breathtaking it all looked, like the world itself had taken a deep breath, and he finally got to feel it from way up high. Sora snapped his eyes to the girls for a split second. He locked his eyes on Chris, like nothing else in the world mattered. Sora was convinced she looked absolutely stunning then. Out of nowhere, she caught Dalton and Rurika staring at that guy with a sly, knowing grin. This hit Sora like a jolt. He went all nervous and told the guys, "We've got to head back now. It's already late." Chris backed him up on the spot. "Yeah, exactly. Time to go." Sora couldn't believe it. Chris stepped up and backed him, for real. That left him even more lost, so he snapped and yelled, "Everybody run," and sent the whole crew bolting. The horse suddenly bolted off, then sprinted away at full speed. Sora's panic surged as he pleaded with the horse to slow down just a little. Next morning, Siphon declared they were kicking off stage 2 and warned that the trip from Ulka to the trading city of Phasis would eat up 6 long days, so they had no choice but to push forward. The guys were jacked up and ready to tear down the road. They finally didn't have to trek all the way from Ulka to the Thesis anymore. At Ulka, they offloaded most of the carriages, clearing the way for fresh cargo and a whole wave of new adventurers. Those guys are personally answering to wagon number 3. Some adventurers hopped onto the roofs of their wagons to scout the land around them, so Sora climbed up too. And Rurika snapped at the guy. "Don't you dare fall." Sora cinched the ropes around his body and pulled them tight, and suddenly the ride on that wagon felt way more comfortable than he'd expected. The coachman whipped his head toward Sora and said they'd crank the pace up just a notch enough to rattle you a bit, then warned the driver to be careful, because anyone who isn't used to that kind of motion usually ends up seasick fast. Suddenly, the guys started trembling like they were about to break apart. Sora whipped around to the girls and demanded to know if they were okay. Rurika nodded and said, "Yeah, we're good." Then the girl leaned in and asked, "So how's Sora doing?" He realized this is killing him, his ass is in agony, and he's sick of being bounced around like this. But then Sora suddenly snapped out of it. His nausea vanished like it was never there. He finally figured out it was his enhanced recovery skill. One snap of it, and the motion sickness vanished. And his butt was right back to normal. Sora grinned at the girls and told them, "I'm good. Bring it on. I can handle anything." The second Sora thought it was finally over, that awful nausea slammed back into him, and if it's already this bad, it could get even worse. Sora was really hoping this would finally sharpen his skills, because if it did, that'd be huge for him. The guys kept rolling down the road, and nothing bad even dared to happen. So yeah, they were riding high and grinning like life was perfect. The coachman told Sora, "After we reach Physis, we'll split up." And Sora answered, "Yeah, I get it." The coachman sighed that it was heartbreaking to haul two such beauties around and then have to let them go. The coachman leaned in and told the guy, "If I were you, I'd ride with us, no questions. I'd even drop the trading." Sora let out a small laugh. It's been 4 days since they tore out of Olka, and now the carts are rolling again after that meal break. The trade city of Physis still sits 2 long days ahead, and for them, the road has been nothing but smooth sailing. He realized everything was fine then. Out of nowhere, something snapped inside his head. Then my detection skill pinged me someone was out there in the forest, somewhere to the right. Sora blurted to the guys right away, then slammed the brakes because nobody's supposed to know what he can do. The guy figured he should spill the whole thing to him right now. The coachman leaned in and demanded to know what Sora had up there, and the man immediately started to stall, like he didn't want to say it. Sora stared at the next move, unsure if they were truly monsters, because if that guy let slip his skill, anyone watching might clock that Sora had caught on. Sora figured someone would spot it even if he stayed silent. Then CL popped up beside that guy again out of nowhere. Totally out of the blue, CL charged straight through the mess like it was nothing, leaving the guy stunned. Sora then grilled CL about what happened, and CL admitted he just didn't think he could stand getting dragged into stuff like that. Sora caught it right away. CL was drowning in sadness. That moment left the guy on edge, super cautious and ready for anything. Sora introduced his friends, and the second he did, a terrible feeling hit him, like they were all walking into danger, and somehow, the worst part was how scared he was for himself. Sora realized he didn't have to brag about his skill at all. He just had to pass it on to someone else. Sora snapped his head toward Rurika and told her his gut was screaming that the forest on the right felt wrong. The girl wasted no time roaming the area, and Sora just couldn't figure out what was going on, so the guy told Rurika to check it. And when she finally did, shock ripped across her face. Rurika snapped right away at Siphon, blasting out that she had an urgent report. The girl said the 6 things on the right looked like wolves from their size and they were closing in fast. Siphon slammed to a stop and froze every single cart in an instant. Siphon called out to the whole squad that 6 monsters were charging out of the forest on their right, and yeah, they looked like wolves. Whispers spread through the crowd in seconds, and Siphon snapped an order to lock in combat formation. Siphon laid it out straight first. They'd protect the merchants and the horses, then they'd secure the cargo. Only after that would they worry about saving the adventurers themselves and the lives of their comrades. The guy snapped into full panic, shouting that they hadn't even fought the wolves yet, while she prayed they could pull it off. Sora kept his eyes locked on the danger ahead, and the guy's whole body tightened because he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong there. Sora immediately realized their moves were way too weird to ignore. It's like one guy is hunting down 5 others at once. Siphon caught a rustle in the forest, snapped the whole squad to attention, and announced they were closing in. White wolves exploded into view, and right behind them, a massive monster launched itself at the guys chasing them. This monster lunged and snatched one of the wolves right in its grip. Siphon shot to his senses and realized this wasn't just any beast, it was a tiger wolf. Sora stared, totally thrown off, because the white wolves were fleeing that monster like it was the end of the world. Trapped in the monster's mouth, the white wolf let out a painful whine, then the other wolves snapped to attention and spun toward their fallen comrade. They spotted one of their own getting crushed by trouble. Sora stared at it hard and realized they weren't just attacking, their whole move was meant to hit the tiger wolf and rescue him. Rage snapped through the wolves as they stared down the monster, so they surged at the tiger wolf, battling tooth and claw to keep their comrade alive. But then, Boom Tiger Wolf lashed out with a single paw and sent every wolf that attacked him flying away. White wolves shot up into the sky, then crashed down to the earth like thunder. The whole crew froze in shock, and Sora couldn't believe it. He tossed them aside with a single brutal punch. The white wolves huddled on their paws and started trembling from the agony. The tiger wolf snapped out a furious growl, and the white wolves' courage crumbled as they shook harder and harder. With the evil monster roaring, the white wolves suddenly scattered and fled. They sprinted straight for the wagons and the squad, and Siphon snapped to every guy, "They're coming. Get ready, now." Siphon told them the newcomers would hold the line and guard the merchants, while everyone else charged straight into battle with the wolves. Siphon snaps that nobody panic, go on, take them out one by one, and their squad will handle Tiger Wolf. Sora shouted, "Fawn, tell me why the hell shouldn't we help those guys?" Siphon snapped back that they hadn't even caught their breath from the road yet, so their arrival would just get in the way. Siphon told them to sit back and watch the fight, then leave everything to the seasoned adventurers. You told Siphon you were already on the move, and Siphon just nodded back like, got it. Then the tiger wolf tore forward, charging straight at the squad. The monster slammed to a halt right by the squad. Siphon snapped his gaze to Yuno and grinned. Like always, you've got the rear. The vanguard's gonna hack it into pieces. Suddenly, Siphon leaned in and told, "You know, she looked absolutely stunning today." Then, snapped into action and started using her power right away. He slammed into the tiger wolf with a power rush, and the vanguard snapped into position, ready to unleash the attack. He swung at the tiger wolf with everything he had. Wham! But the monster snapped back and shook it off like nothing happened, untouched, unhurt. The vanguard just clucked in disbelief, then fury hit. The monster lunged at the vanguard, slamming a furious swipe only for a shield to snap into place in front of its claws. His partner slammed up that shield, and the vanguard nodded, calling it perfect. The guy seized control of the shield and timed every hit on the monster's body, and right then, Siphon snapped into battle mode. Siphon hurled himself forward and swung with everything he had, smashing the monster dead on. A grin snapped onto Siphon's face, and the guy roared, "Vor now!" Suddenly, an arrow came screaming through the air and slammed toward the monster. It was just another squad member. He lit up with pure joy because he nailed the target dead on. Right then, Sora and the girls watched the squad move in perfect sync, and they couldn't stop gushing about how insanely coordinated the guys were. Chris told her she couldn't believe it. This guy popped off the aerosol in a flash with zero wind magic. Rika snapped that it wasn't just the guys who pulled it off. She was dead sure that monster had zero chance to live. Sora questioned the girls, and yeah, that's the crew of mountain goblins. The kind who were clearly serious adventurers. Sora figured this crew was made of battle-hardened veteran adventurers. At that exact moment, blood started oozing out of the monster's wound, and Tiger Walk's whole body began to shake, yet somehow, he was still alive. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, a squad of battle-worn men got pinned against two feral wolves, and the mountain goblins were locked in a fight with Tiger Walk. The battle-hardened squad faced three wolves head-on, while the fresh recruits stood guard over the merchants who stayed locked in their wagons, watching every terrifying moment unfold. Tiger Walk started to wobble, pain snapping through him, but he didn't back down. He was still ready to pounce on those guys. The guys stared as the seasoned adventurers tore into the monster with zero trouble, and then they started swapping theories. Sounds like it's a whole group of mountain goblins. Suddenly, white wolves closed in on the boys like a trap, and everyone braced to strike. Then one guy snapped, "Stop staring and drop it, because those wolves are right here." One of the wolves lunged at the guys on the spot, but the guy snapped his sword in and drove it straight through, while both of them screamed their lungs out and swung wild at the monsters. One of the other guys went straight for the white wolf, and his friend cheered him on like, "Dude, you absolutely crushed it." Right then, Sora, the girls, and all the new kids froze with their mouths hanging open, staring at the battlefield like it was unreal, and the guy was bragging that they were all strong enough to take monsters down with zero trouble. Rureka blurted, "At this speed, I swear it's gonna end any second." And Sora nodded right beside her like, "Yeah, it looks that way." Just like that, Sora snapped his eyes on CL. She'd swooped back to him again. Sora shot the furry creature a question. What was wrong? CL didn't beat around the bush. "Yup, there is." Then Sora pressed again, asking if there was more to it. Out of the forest, a rustle tore through the air, and right on its heels, a whole pack of white wolves burst out and snapped at the guys. They bolted out of the forest and thundered straight toward the squad. Then one of the monsters crashed into some unsuspecting guy, and he didn't even get a chance to react. Sora saw a whole new pack of monsters charging toward them, locked eyes on the attacker, and yelled for the guy to stay sharp and careful. But Sora saw it. There was no way the guy could react in time, so he slammed him down hard and cleared the path, letting the white wolf rocket past. The wolf snapped its jaws shut mid-air and somehow didn't land a single bite. The white wolf skidded to a stop and spun back at the guys. Chris couldn't believe it, because another pack of wolves just slammed into them, and Sora was replaying it in his head, realizing he turned off his detection and never saw them coming. Out of nowhere, Rudika yanked her sword free and told the guys, don't panic. The girl snapped into action, decided to lift the team's spirits, and told the guys, "Your job is simple, guard the merchants, no matter what." And every single person shouted at once, "Yes, it is," and the whole place erupted in cries. Right away, the guys tore into every monster that came for them. Then Rurika swung hard and carved one clean hit into the white wolf. Then Ruraka burst out, shouting that it had dropped to -1 now. Kristen didn't move. She snapped her fire magic onto a pack of wolves, and the monsters erupted in flames, burning alive within seconds. Sora roared and swung his sword with everything he had, crashing into the monster as it burned under Chris's magic. That move let them wipe out another white wolf, and Sora snapped to his team that they only had about 2 minutes left. Then the guy pumped them up, saying they had an insane combo working. Chris slammed her wind magic into one of the wolves, and a roaring column of air shot up, lifting the white wolf and locking its power down, trapping it in the sky so it couldn't get out. The wolf started grinding somersaults in a giant column of brutal wind, and Chris instantly threw himself into the fight, right? Then the girl lunged straight for the monster, and it crashed to the ground in the very same moment. Sora spun to Chris and told her she crushed it, and Chris shot back that the guy also did an awesome job taking down monsters. Right then, Siphon, stuck trying to deal with the tiger wolf alongside his squad, couldn't help thinking the new arrivals were way too loud. The adventurers spun toward them and demanded, "What's happening here?" And then their eyes went wide with terror. Siphon snapped that the squad wasn't alone anymore. Another pack of wolves was closing in. The tiger wolf lunged. The second confusion hit the squad, everyone's growls swirling. Then he pounced on them like a blur, and the first target was the shield guy, snatched up by the monster's paw. He shoved the shield guy aside, and the moment he stumbled down, the monster barreled right past the group, so when Siphon spotted it, he immediately started cursing up a storm. The tiger wolf cranked up his speed again and again, then barreled straight at the rookie team. Siphon's stomach dropped. He knew they were in serious trouble, so he yelled at Rurika to run, because the monster had her in its sights. Rurika whipped her head around and spotted a tiger wolf charging straight for her. Then, right in front of her, a white wolf streaked through the air, and panic slammed into her as she realized she was getting hit from two sides at once. Rurika planted her two swords beside the white wolf, daringly turning her back as the tiger wolf closed in. Rurika whipped around and boom, the monster was already right on top of her. Panic hit as she realized her business was doomed because she wouldn't have a second to spare. Then Sora burst in and saved the girl. She swung straight at the paw that had been charging for Rurika. Sora blasted past the monster, crashed to the ground, and strung together a few sick somersaults. Yet the guy still somehow managed to line it up right, and Siphon with Rurika panicked hard, screaming at him to snap out of it. Sora strained to push himself up from the ground, but his strength was almost gone. His whole body trembled as he tried. After that, Sora shot to his feet and slammed his sword right beside the monster's muzzle, and the guy screamed that there was no way Sora would ever lay a finger on his friends.